This is James Arnold Taylor, voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Welcome to a more civilized podcast. This is the podcast you're looking for. You may not go about your business. Stay here, listen, and then move along.
Hello, dear listeners. Here's a quick note before we get started today. This episode is very, very full of spoilers. And we start right away. We skip over the newsy news because this was planned to just be a short Nerf nugget, but it, of course, ballooned into much, much more than that. So, this is your early warning to turn off the episode if you have not yet seen Rise of Skywalker, and to come back and enjoy once you have done so. Again, Merry Christmas. Hopefully you're enjoying your day. And hopefully this is enough time for you to scramble to your stop buttons. All right, on with the show.
Hey there, listeners. The Nerf Nugget you've all been waiting for. I'm Kyler.
I'm Chris.
I'm Ross.
And I'm fudging with my mic to make it sit right. There we go. Is that better?
And collectively, we are disappointed.
Yeah, so
That's a gentle word for it.
Yes.
Many of you have been asking for our opinions. I have done my best, although mostly unsuccessfully, trying to not say anything until this Nerf Nugget.
Kyler's very concerned about, like, I don't want to bias people and everything, and I'm just like, no, you can't. If you tell people it's bad, then it will only seem better in comparison to whatever they were going in expecting. Like, this movie is so bad that you cannot make it worse by telling them it's bad.
All three of us, we were talking before the show, none of us want to become the thing we hate, where everything is bad in Star Wars and we crap all over it and we're jerks to people and telling you you're a moron for
As
liking
a Last
this
Jedi
thing.
fan, I have been dealing with that for 2 years, and I don't want any
You know,
more of it.
and so, like, we joke with the dumb fan theories, and we're like, oh, if you believe this theory, you're an idiot. You know, like, and that was all supposed to be anyway, in good fun.
Yes.
But we genuinely, with this review, don't want to come across as overly intellectual, snobby jerks. Patronizing jerks or anything like that. But all three of us were severely disappointed with the movie.
Yes.
To put it in the nicest possible terms.
Yes.
So we have some things we want to say about the movie. We're going to say them. We're going to try to keep things quick and non-repetitive. And I say that for your benefit as well as ours, because it's hard. So I think we'll go off of my list, and then we'll just sort of add things in as they come.
Works for me.
So the first thing that I wrote down on last night after getting home from the movie, and we do genuinely want to thank Andrew and his wife for coming.
I'm sorry,
they
for
were
putting you
delightful.
through that. Yeah, you guys were great.
Like, I said this on our Twitter. Easily the highlight of the night was getting to meet them and hang out with them. They were delightful people, and we appreciate them coming down with us.
And I meant to actually stop everyone and do a quick postmortem with Andrew there, but we were just too... I don't even know a good word. Chris, what's a good word?
Russ would have had to edit out so much of my language that it wouldn't have been worth recording.
It was... Yeah, I literally
I'm
had
to
to,
not to do that to you today.
I literally had to shush Chris in the theater and was like, just... Okay, calm down. Save it for we're recording tomorrow. Just try to hold it in, man.
Yeah.
When it was, I booked it out of there because I was like, "There's a guy behind me as we were leaving that was just like, oh, that was so good," and I was like, "I'm about this close to insulting him, so I'm just gonna get out of here."
So last night, get home, and I'm just reeling from the experience.
Spent the next 4 hours discussing this with my sister.
Yeah, I can imagine that was good.
Yeah, I have a movie credit friend,
Yeah.
Kenny, from the podcast Bacon Sale. I reached out to him and talked to him for an hour and a half, 2 hours about this. And to sort of collect my thoughts and itemize something resembling coherence for this podcast, I wrote down a list of dislikes and likes for the movie. We're going to go through the dislikes, and then we're going to end on the likes so that there's at least a glimmer of positivity in this. So the first thing that came to mind was Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
Just Palpatine.
About it,
The fact that he's included in this story and the way that they chose to include him, which is just wholesale ripping off, and not even ripping off, just wholesale transplanting one of, if not the worst.
because this has happened more than once.
The worst storylines from the EU that got killed, fortunately, in 2019, and then they bring back, like, the motherlode, the king of all bad ideas from the EU.
Yeah.
I was so disappointed, doesn't even begin to describe it. I was just like, okay, you've already teased that Palpatine is going to be in this, maybe as a Force ghost or something like that, trying to influence Kylo Ren. I would have been okay with that. If you're going to include him, that would have been the least narratively and creatively lazy way to do so, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But to just be like, hey, remember all those stories about Palpatine being cloned and coming back and having to have the A-Team get together and fight him again? Let's just do that from the 90s, where there were many of those, and then they just decide to do that again. I was flabbergasted that that's the route they went with. It just completely shocked.
Did they officially say that he was a clone? Or it seemed like it was a little ambiguous when they actually, quote-unquote, talked about it in the film.
I did wonder why he was bothering with his giant jar of Snoke clones.
Yeah.
Yes.
If he can clone himself exactly, too. But
Yeah,
sure,
why?
whatevs.
Yeah, why bother cloning Snoke?
He's clearly not as deformed as he once was, so I guess, yeah, probably.
Well, partially. I mean, his face wasn't as deformed, but his hands were falling apart.
Yeah, but
I have some headcanon that, in my head, smooth some of this out, but we can get to that later.
I do too. But
And
I told you that
then
last night, though.
Yeah.
Probably the motherlode of things that I hated in this movie is Rey's last name is Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
That she is a Palpatine. I was just like, guys, really? Of all the things that I hated in the movie, that was the number one thing that I hated. Because it destroys the beautiful message of 7 and 8, which is you don't have to be anybody special to rise to the occasion and do something good and great. Anybody, any ordinary person can rise up to meet darkness and face it down. That is a fantastic message. But apparently, in the Star Wars galaxy, bloodline is everything. Either you got it or you don't, and if you don't have it, well, that sucks
Unless
to
your
be
name
you.
is Bridger. I mean, like, it's like... I'm just like, why? Why does it have to be that way in the movies when in any other property we're just like, oh yeah, nobody ever looked at Ezra Bridger and was like, well, he has to be related to someone.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just dumb.
It's so stupid. I'm just like, honestly, like that was a bright, shining, beautiful thing in episode 7 and 8, that Rey is a nobody, and she is still saying, you know what, I may be a nobody, but I'm not going to stand for this evil. I'm going to stand up to it. I'm going to do my best. I may fail, but I'm going to give it my all. That is a glorious, beautiful, wonderful message that we need more of in this world. And then they're just like, nope. If you want to get anything done in this galaxy, you better be a Skywalker or a Palpatine.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's so, or a Kenobi. Like, oh, good heavens. It's so stupid. Drives me nuts. Any
Yep, I agree. Keeping it short. I'm just agreeing.
Potentially interesting characters were left totally unexplored. So, we introduce Poe's ex-girlfriend, who seems to have a pretty interesting character and potential backstory, and then they're like, oh yeah, tease this, dangle this in front of you. All right, now don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Again, ever.
Yep.
Or what?
They take people from the marketing and then don't ever have them hardly even in the film. Yeah. Claude, is that his name? The big slug thing that was fixing the Falcon in that first scene.
He's literally on
of a couple shots.
He's on the poster. He's on the main poster, and he's addressed once in the movies, and he's got about 40 frames of screen time.
Well, and you have also Dominic Monaghan's character. I mean, he says some lines.
Yeah, he's there, but he's not.
But it's
important.
like
you could have replaced him with Rose easily.
Yeah. Well, and like
or Billy Lord's character,
or literally anyone.
Literally anyone.
They already had a surfeit of characters to fill that role.
Yeah.
They just stuck him in there as like a favor to him or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or was it more star power? They wanted more star power behind it, maybe? That's my thought, is you paid him an awful lot to go in and
but it's
say
Star
2
Wars.
lines.
Like, what more star power do you need? Like, Star Wars is its own star power. You know what I mean?
I'm just trying to figure out the reason. I mean, it just doesn't...
Well,
why?
That's the thing, is there is no reason for that. Like, because, I mean, like Chris said, like, literally any other Rebel uniform could have said those lines, and they would have had the exact same impact on the story. He was literally there to just give out some exposition and details.
Yeah.
And that role could have been filled by anybody. Anybody. Could have been filled by the calamari guy that we saw.
Yeah. Who may or may not be Akbar's son or grandson or
Yeah, of
something?
course he is.
No, he is. In that movie,
He's one of the two,
absolutely he is.
Yeah.
If they're on screen, then they're related to someone,
Yeah.
because that's how this sort of schlocky crap writing goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've mentioned this dozens of times on this show before. One of the things that I love about Star Wars is combat. I think everybody pretty generally enjoys a cool lightsaber fight. I mean, that's what people always think of when you think about Phantom Menace, is the Duel of the Fates. You see, the double lightsaber ignite, and there's this awesome fight, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that was a really cool thing." You know?
And it's over the top. It's badly choreographed if you actually know how sword fighting works.
But the rule of
But
cool
it's fun,
is just whatever, It's
still it's basically an elaborately choreographed dance.
Yeah.
But it's a cool dance.
The lightsaber fights in this movie were extremely lackluster, I thought.
They were utterly forgettable.
Exactly. Like, there was not really, like, I'm going, okay, so there was a lightsaber fight in the Death Star wreckage, but that only really stands out because we've seen it already for 6 months in the trailers. The fight itself isn't really
Well, it didn't actually do anything more than we saw in the trailers.
Yeah.
It was just that ad nauseum.
Yeah. And, like, so I talked with my sister, who I unfortunately was unable to save from seeing this movie. She called me, or she texted me last night, and she's like, "I'm so confused." And I was like, "Yeah, you and everyone else. I'll call you in the morning. I'm really tired." And so I talked to her this morning, and she was like, "I'm so confused." Like, she's like, "I thought like the fights with like Luke and Vader in the old movies were better than these ones." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you're not wrong. You are not wrong." So that was extremely disappointing, right? Everybody wants to go to a Star Wars movie that has Jedi in it, and I only have to say that because Rogue One didn't have official Jedi.
Yeah, they still shoved him in there, though.
Yeah, but like, everybody wants to go to a Star Wars movie and see a really awesome, over the top,
We want to see action
cheesy,
sequences, sure.
Lightsaber
Not even
fight.
I fault that. Like, that's
it's kind of what that's the core DNA of Star Wars.
Sure.
So you want to see that, and to have those lightsaber fights be so totally forgettable was just disappointing. And then similar to that is the ship fights. Both dogfights and capital ships were totally disappointing. I have made no secret that Return of the Jedi is my favorite because of the Battle of Endor, particularly the space half of that, which is awesome. It's so fun to see a cool mix of dogfighting and capital ships just shooting their giant turbo lasers at each other. And what we get is some adequate, and I don't mean that in our joking sense of adequate, I mean it in the literal, it's okay, it's passable dogfighting shots. And then we get that awesome preparatory shot scene in the trailers. Oh, there's this whole huge fleet that is going to just stay in the background the whole time while we focus on more dogfighting. Yep. And I was just like, okay, oh, wait, what? Mm-hmm. You're going to make a huge deal in all your promotional material and all throughout the movie that, hey, if we can just rally the galaxy, they'll show up. Oh my gosh, they're here. All right, now forget about them.
Yeah.
Good, they're here. We have told you, the audience, that they're here, so you just go ahead and assume that they're going to do okay, and we're going to go talk about something else now.
Yeah.
Holy disappointment, Batman. Not a single... I would say I'll have to see it again, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Not a single shot that I can think of do we see capital ships exchanging fire. We see plenty, even after the rebel capital ships arrive, we see plenty of shots of starfighters attacking capital ships and each other, but I don't think we see even a single laser bolt exchanged between capital ships.
And you know what? I kept looking for the Tantive, because you see it warp in, but I don't think you even see it after really the initial
They're literally
sortie.
just in the background, flying around. You can't even see them shooting.
Yeah.
Like, you see plenty of Star Destroyers blowing up and things, but you don't actually see capital ships exchanging fire. And I'm like, well then, what was the point of bringing in capital ships? Why not just tell people, hey, everybody grab a starfighter and come on in here. You'll be faster and more maneuverable anyway.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was so disappointing. And it's possible that that's like a niche disappointment for me, just because I love the capital ships so much. But even narratively, it seems completely pointless to be like, well, if we don't get some capital ships and some bigger guns in here, I mean, this whole thing is over. The war is lost. Oh, good, they're here. And then to completely ignore them for the whole rest of the movie until it's time for Palpatine to threaten them. And then we can show them getting electrocuted real quick.
Was that before the full fleet arrived?
That was after.
The electrocution? I thought that was before.
Oh, no, it was after.
Was it after?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because he opens up the roof to show Rey, just like Luke. You know, that, oh, it's a trap. Here you go. See, your rebel forces are going to die anyway. And zappity zap zap. And then they all start falling out of the sky.
Because I thought it was after Poe regained control.
We should have mentioned, Ross, throw in at the beginning that there's going to be spoilers all over this.
Oh, yeah.
Which, and also, like, this is even a little thing for me, but it's just like I'm sitting there looking at that movie and I'm just like, I long for the days when, like, the Skywalkers were super powerful because they were the Skywalkers and everyone else was just sort of, you know, they got by on other skills or they had to be, you know, it's like, Palpatine wasn't some hyper-powerful world-destroying abomination. He was just some dude who happened to be extremely crafty, and that's how he got by. But then Episode 3 had to be like, no, turns out he's a wicked awesome at lightsaber combat, y'all, because he has to be super awesome because he's the big bad. And then this one's just like, turns out this dude can electrocute an entire fleet while lounging in his easy chair.
Yeah, I had somebody... because like people were like, really, I really liked it, and I was like, okay, my mind is totally open. I would love to love this movie. So please tell me why you like this movie, because if you give me a compelling reason to like this movie, I am desperately looking around for any reason to like this movie. So bring it, please tell me.
And I'm an easy person to please, and I spent the entire movie still trying to just accept zombie Palpatine.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get into it.
Well, so this guy messaged me. He's like, I'll send you a PM. And I'm like, okay, awesome. Like, I'm legit excited to hear any reason to like this movie. And he was talking about Palpatine because he's like, well, what didn't you like about it? I'm like, Palpatine, this is one of the dumbest things. He's like, no. Palpatine is the culmination of all the Sith. And I'm like, cool. That would work if this were the first time we saw this Palpatine guy. How in the world did the culmination of all the Sith, with all the Sith living in him and all of this immense power, get taken out by an asthmatic cyborg and his defeated son?
Yep. A one-handed asthmatic cyborg.
Yeah, you know, it's like, if he's this powerful...
It's literally artificial inflation. Like, it's like, we have to be bigger and badder, so it turns out that wasn't even his final form. And it's just like, oh my word, really?
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason for it. There's no logic behind it. It's just, he's more badass now because it's later in the story, so he has to be more badass now.
Yeah.
That's the entirety of the logic.
Yeah. This kind of goes along with, this next one kind of goes along with introducing potentially interesting characters and then doing nothing with them. Finn's obviously ignored "I love you" to Rey as they're sinking in the sand. Where he's like, Rey, I've got to tell you something,
like,
you know.
We spend the entire movie going, I got to tell you something, and then we never do.
Yeah. Well, and see, that's the thing, is my first thought was it was going to be an "I love you," but then later I think it's I can feel the Force.
I don't think so.
Well,
no.
But he started being
he doesn't
like,
realize that until halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
He doesn't start doing any of that until halfway through, where he starts going, I just have a feeling.
Well, but
and
see, that's...
it's clear when they're in the little sandworm tunnels that are totally copied from Diablo 2.
Yes.
When Poe is getting all jealous. Oh, and that kind of leads him
Poe was super jealous about Finn having a crush on someone else.
Out of nowhere, we have a Poe, Rey, Finn love triangle. Just like, literally out of nowhere, because Finn in 7 and 8 expresses zero romantic interest in Rey. Finn in episode 8...
Well, Finn in 7 is very
Finn in
much
7, yes,
bit,
but in 8...
Well, in 8, they're not around each other.
Well, but he's also kind of like, oh, maybe this Rose chick.
Sure,
you know?
But Finn having emotions for Rey, that's fine by me. That's not out of nowhere.
No, that one is less jarring, but then for Poe to just be like, what were you going to say? You love her? What is that? Oh, we're not going to talk about... Okay, we'll talk about it later. And then they totally never do.
Which I was just laughing. I was just like, all their interactions here would make so much more sense if they had just given the Poe Finn shippers their Poe Finn romance. Like, I'm not sure why Poe's upset about this otherwise.
So that was ridiculous. Another thing that bothered me right from the get-go is that the opening crawl tells you the entire movie from start to finish. Mm-hmm. Literally, I got to the opening crawl and I was like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what this movie is going to do, exactly what it's going to tell me and show me. I don't need to sit here because I've just read the opening crawl. And that's all. Literally, like, if you've seen the movie and you've read the opening crawl, I defy you to tell me that it doesn't spell out the whole movie, which is really bothersome because I got to thinking about the other opening crawls, which do one of two things. Sometimes they do both. The other opening crawls in every other Star Wars movie tell you what has happened since the last Star Wars movie. And they tell you, yep, and they, just a brief, like, here's a couple of things that you're going to need to know.
By the way, Luke is a commander now. Han is also a commander.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then the opening crawl, usually the last paragraph, tells you what you're going to see in the next 5 to 10 minutes of the movie. And then it lets the movie finish telling you whatever the movie's going to tell you. Episode 9's opening crawl says, by the way, Palpatine's back and they're going to go destroy Palpatine. And it takes them 2.5 hours to go to Palpatine and destroy Palpatine. Literally, the opening crawl tells you the entirety of the movie, which was so disappointing.
Yep.
You know, and we're 30 seconds into the movie and I'm going, oh, so there's no surprises left. I mean, you know the good guys are going to win, so, like, there's always that thing that's not surprising, but it was just like, wow, so really you're telling us, well, we're going to spend a lot of time trying to get to Palpatine, and then they're going to confront him and defeat him. What's left in this movie then?
Yep.
Okay. It was so just awful. This one, I'll just briefly say this because I want Chris's opinion on this too. I think episode 9 pretty clearly shows that Rian Johnson did deviate from an established storyline.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, see, and I'm curious, like, it's clear that he did that. Like, this was my Facebook post on, I was just like, okay, I owe some people an apology. I've been saying for 2 years now that Rian Johnson wasn't trying to screw things up. He wasn't trying to steer things in some new direction. He was just trying to be creative with what he was given. And after seeing that movie, I was like, oh, no, that's pretty obviously what, like, I'm picturing this scene where Rian Johnson's handed the script. He's sitting across from, like, JJ and Kathleen and is just sitting there looking at the script and it's just like, flip a page, skeptical eyebrow raise, glance up at the two of them, flip a page. So this is the plan, huh? Great. It's like, yeah, so are you interested? Well, so I'd who'd be writing if I'm directing? Can I write? It's like, yeah, you can write. Cool. How much creative freedom would I have?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you can do what you like. Cool.
Can I get that in writing?
I'll do this. Let me do that. Yeah, I'm on for this. And then it's just him, like, because, well, and I've been saying for a while that it's just like, yeah, he mirrored 5 and 6 pretty heavily so that he would leave them nowhere to go, because it would be straight up embarrassing to just do number 6 again after that, which is basically what they did here. And
I will say this, episode 9 has definitely raised my opinion of Last Jedi.
It's raised my opinion of Rogue One.
Hey, it's a win for everybody.
Or rather, it's lowered my standards enough that Rogue One doesn't seem bad anymore.
So that was like, you know, it's all those people that are like, no, he was following a plan. This was the plan all along. Like,
well, and I can almost see how JJ could be looking at this going like, oh no, I guess, you know, I didn't plan on Snoke dying. He pretty effing obviously planned on Snoke still being alive in 9 to occupy the role that Palpatine ended occupying.
Right.
And just being like, oh, it turns out I've been Palpatine all along. Which would have been equally stupid to what we got.
And that makes me wonder if Rian Johnson didn't throw such a big wrench by killing Snoke, that I wonder if Snoke was supposed to, like, if Palpatine wasn't supposed to be in this at all.
See,
and it was just supposed to be Snoke being like,
I've
built on what Palpatine did.
But the thing is, J.J. Abrams did sign off on everything Rian did. And so I'm like, I just wonder if J.J. was sitting there like, oh, well, I mean, the whole idea is that he's a clone anyway, so there can be more than one. Like, sure, yeah, you can kill him, that's fine, this is cool. And I'm looking at everything it did, and I think like 90% of it was just J.J. going like, well, someone can still make that work, that's fine. We also got to remember that J.J. wasn't planning on being the next film when he was okaying this, so.
Another thing, and I wonder how many people caught on to this. Like, my military history is one of my favorite things, and you can't be effective in military without logistics. If you have poor logistics, you're going to lose. Doesn't matter how well trained or well equipped your army is. Army's got to eat. Sorry. And so
to quote Zycon, there is a level of power against which no amount of tactics can be successful. That does exist, but yes, generally.
Yeah. And so I'm looking at this going, okay, so Palpatine has secreted away in the unknown regions an entire fleet. I'll give him that. I'll hand wave that. The galaxy's a big place. It can produce a lot of resources. I'm fine with that. Palpatine managed to sneak away enough resources to build not 1 but 2 Death Stars without really anybody knowing.
Sure. And an entire fleet of miniature Death Stars.
Yeah. And so to have him secret away, and they're ISD-1s as well. They're older. They're seen in episode 4, but they're not seen in episode 5 or 6. So for him to say, we're going to retire these older versions while retrofitting them with laser guns, and then secret them away somewhere, I got zero problem with that. He's plenty capable, a ruler, to secret that away.
Even if there weren't, I'd just be like, sure, it's Star Wars. Like, I don't expect it to play true to the laws of economics and this, that, and the other. Like, sure, whatever.
But this is one thing that really I couldn't get past, and I'm just going, wow, and maybe I could hand wave if there was less ridiculousness and stupidity going on in the rest of the movie, but I just can't let it go at this point. They're all crewed by living beings, which means the Emperor had to regularly send food shipments to that place during his entire 30-year reign, which again, while he's alive, let's say that while he's alive, he's able to do this. And my wife was like, well, he's alive now. And I'm like, okay. And in the last 10 years that he's been alive, controlling Snoke, tempting Kylo Ren, sure, let's say he manipulated more people. What about the 20 years in between where he's dead and disembodied and has no influence yet? How is he feeding these people? What?
Yep.
Like, you've got half a century's worth of people to feed daily.
And even if they were doing it on their own, they've just heard their emperor is dead. Why would they stick around?
Yeah, like, it's the logistics of that makes no sense for it being fully crewed and staffed by living beings. Like, if it were to be automated by droids, okay, well then you literally can mothball and secret and store away this fleet and then flip a switch and you're good to go. But I was like, that's also so stupid.
Speaking of ridiculous logistics and political issues and everything, it's just like, so the Supreme Leader has abruptly decided to be good again, but he's still the Supreme Leader. Like, is there what he's not just going to come back and say, hey, I'm calling this off. You're going to tell me that nobody in the entire First Order would go, well, that's the Supreme Leader. We got to follow him. If he's denouncing all these people following this guy who claims to be the Emperor as traitors, they probably are. Like, there was nothing he could do. His best bet was to just, like, inexplicably appear on this planet for no reason.
Yeah, go it on his own.
And just after taking some time to change his clothes, and then and just run off on his own to do it.
No, I think he just took off a couple layers because he still had the whole the lightsaber head.
And speaking of interesting characters that were left very, very underdeveloped, General Pride.
Oh yeah,
I'm just
also the Knights of Ren.
Yeah,
still.
Well, that's early on in the movie, I was just like, we're not doing anything with the Knights. They're just here so that when Kylo does a redemption arc, he'll be able to have someone to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Lame.
Well, and they came up out of nowhere, too. Why were they on that planet,
Yeah.
Well,
if they're his knights, why were they? I mean, yeah, sure, he's turned good, but, like, they don't know that yet.
How did they know?
Exactly.
But
yeah. It's... Yeah. This is a quote from my sister from our conversation this morning. Luke, expressing the things she didn't like or felt confused about. She said, Luke being the typical son of Anakin Skywalker. Oh, I'm moody, I'm annoying. And I was like, well, yeah. So there was that. Don't Rose and Finn kiss in episode 8? Don't they do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, she kisses him.
Right. So now he's just like, bye, Felicia, in episode 9, It's like, hey, thanks for saving me. I know we had a moment, but peace out. I'm going for the hot chick, or the popular chick, It's just like, what is going on with these relationships here?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it particularly stood out because this movie took such an absurd amount of time to address literally every little niggling fan theory, every little concern from everything. Like, its entire, like, I complained about Rogue One's dialogue being, like, 2/3 to 3/4 info dump. This movie is just solid info dump.
Yeah.
Nobody ever has a conversation because it's a meaningful character moment. It's just entirely, quick, get all the facts they need to know across, and every little detail anyone has ever asked about or mentioned in any way, shape, or form. We have to address that right now. There's a moment when Rey's hearing all the Jedi voices where one of them whispers to her, "You were never a clone." And it's just like,
Was there?
Yes, and it's literally just
Oh my
there
gosh, I
so that
missed
we
that.
can dismiss that. And I'm just like, So you're telling me in this movie that is obsessively, stupidly combing over every last little thing that ever happened so that we can either go, never mind, hand wave that, or, like, let's just address this so that you all get the answer you wanted to that. You can't, you're just going to ignore the fact that that ever happened. Like, you're not even going to address, like, oh yeah, you know, we broke up, or whatever, or we never dated, or like, hey, I'm not interested in you. Like, I didn't care. But I was still just sitting there like, where's the discontiguity here? Like, why did you just abruptly decide not to address that when you're addressing literally everything else?
Yeah.
Kylo's implied now to be a good Force ghost,
I guess.
apparently.
Was he? Because
he disappeared.
Only Jedi have ever done that before.
Is that only a Jedi thing?
Yeah.
Yep. At least
Still
that's
to
all we've
this
ever
day,
seen
we
it
haven't
as, yeah.
seen a Sith do that.
We saw Emperor Palpatine explode, but apparently that wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, only Darth Vader did not disappear, and he still got to be a Force ghost. But like, well, I mean, maybe he wasn't in that suit of armor anymore, and he was just burning the armor. Whatever, who cares? But
That is the official
that is the
story,
official,
is that
okay.
his body disappeared.
What was left of it
but
vanished,
now there's still the suit that's there.
which is
and so
half of his body. So.
Yeah, and so they
Okay,
burned
sure,
it.
okay. But even so, yeah, that's not a thing that any bad guy has ever done.
Yeah. So I was just like, really? Oh. And it makes...
Bad guys explode, good guys fade.
And it's super confusing, too, because Vader, remember, he disappears. There's not a lot of time for him from the point he is redeemed to the time he is burned and dies to learn how to do that. So the official answer was, well, he was taught this during the Clone Wars, how to do this, so that he was prepared, and that's how they hand-waved
Even
it.
though
So,
Yoda didn't teach it to Obi-Wan until the end
after.
of the Clone Wars,
Yeah.
after he'd already...
and so it's like, okay, so we can hand-wave and say maybe he learned that. All right. But when did Kylo Ren learn this?
Luke's
you know?
Jedi Training 101 is like, all right, kids, first lesson, just in case any of you accidentally die here, because that's probably going to happen. Let me just address that right up front. Just in case any of you do die, let me teach you how to become a Force ghost after you die. This is the number one most important thing. So Kylo was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll keep that in mind just in case I ever die.
Yeah, there you go. Oh my gosh. We'll transition from the good to the bad with this next one, which is in both categories. The Force healing, which was introduced in Mandalorian yesterday.
No, I haven't seen that.
Or Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So, yeah. Grief Karga gets a scratch on his arm and Baby Yoda heals it. All right, new Force powers. I'm okay with it.
It's from the EU, you know, it's nothing that the Force hasn't done before.
Yeah.
Although mainly it existed because video games needed a way to heal you. Like,
Yeah.
Well,
other
and
than
they had it in
facts.
several of the books as well. Like,
Yeah.
but they usually came more in the form of a meditation and much slower.
Yes.
So this is more like casting the spell and using a spell slot, whereas
Yes.
otherwise it's a ritual cast. But-
Yeah.
Sure.
So, way to go deep on that, Ross. So, in principle, I'm okay with the introduction of new Force powers. In principle.
Yeah.
But healing the snake just to show that Rey can heal
Can
people.
do the thing. Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oh, so we're only getting shown this because it's
Because
going
we're
to
gonna
show
use
up
it
later,
later.
and they want to establish that this is a thing she knows how to do. It was so dumb. It was so dumb. And for a second, I was like, oh, are they going to tie in Rebels here and have her, like, commune
Oh, yeah.
with the
I
animals
wondered about
because
that,
of
too.
Ezra? Oh, no? No, we're not going to go? Oh, okay, never mind. So, overall, it was really dumb in the movie.
How about you, Russ? Any other dumb things?
Oh, yes. In fact, you didn't really hit very many of mine.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I pared mine down
my
to
list-
just like 2 or 3 central
My list was
things.
not comprehensive. This was just as things were coming to mind. I was
Yeah.
trying to scramble and write them down. while also talking with Kenny, the movie critic.
Yeah. Well, and mine. So, still coming home, I was just still so all over the place. I couldn't even think
and
straight.
this was after you and I had talked for like half an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I came home and just started looking on the Star Wars subreddit because they always have, like movie discussions. I was like, okay, let's see what people are saying. And they basically just started going down like a list. And I was like, oh yeah. And so a lot of this is like stuff that I had thought during the movie when I was in my lucid moments between trying to accept Zombie Palpatine.
I swear, sitting and watching it, I just kept shrinking down further into my seat. Like I had my hand up over my mouth, so that I could creep it up over my face occasionally when I'm like, "Oh God, really? We're doing that cliche?"
Yeah.
Okay.
And see, and I kept holding out hope that there was still going to be a Force Ghost, Kylo's a little bit crazy thing, because we had that scene with him and Harrison Ford, where it wasn't so much Harrison Ford as a Force Ghost at least in my. No.
They established he's a memory. That's why it's okay for him to be here. We're not just using any justification we can to shoehorn something in that makes no sense otherwise.
I was going to say because he is just replaying the scene on Starkiller Base basically, but how it should have gone, right?
Yeah. But it's basically like even then it's just like so Kylo's just hallucinating?
Yeah.
Or is this a delusion? Is Kylo just mentally broken?
Well, and see,
what's going on here?
At the end of the movie, when Rey is walking in through the thing and she walks into that extra room that we didn't see Kylo walk into in the first place, I thought, aha, okay, Kylo is just being influenced, and Zombie Palpatine was just a hallucination or Force Ghost induced hallucination. But no, then it still ended up being
which
true.
Would have been cheesy, but at least more slightly unpredictable.
Did you guys ever see the old Beast Wars series when you were kids?
Yeah, I remember that.
Did you ever see the spin-off that they did when all the Transformers get back to Cybertron? So they did the spin-off, and the thing then became nature good, machines bad. And so Megatron represents we're going to go all machine, and then the Transformers were all animal and nature stuff. Megatron ends up sitting in a similar apparatus to what Palpatine was the entire movie. Big arm coming in from the ceiling.
Entire thing, I was just like, oh, it's GLaDOS. It's this. It's that. Like, it's what's her name from the Borg being lowered down into her body.
Yeah.
Like, it's like we've seen that in sci-fi a million times.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's.
Which, again,
so
I don't think it
derivative.
Would be so terrible if so many other things weren't so
no,
bad.
that could be
you know
easily
what I mean?
glossed over if it's just like, oh, that's familiar design. Oh, well.
Right, but
that's
in light of everything else, you're just going, oh, and you couldn't even come up with something new for that.
And it's like, okay, we're just doing that because like everything in this movie is just as utterly derivative as possible.
Yeah. So the first one that we haven't talked about that I have on here is unnecessary cameos and or parts that might as well have been cameos. So I felt really bad for Wedge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All the hype, and he literally gets one line.
Gets half a second of screen time, and is in a...
Like, I really hope they paid him an absurd amount of money for that.
Well, and especially with how much he's rumored to hate the Star Wars series, they would have to get him back, and that's all they gave him, you know? But also, you put your X-Wing pilot not in an X-Wing, you know? I mean... Okay, yeah, they're old, sure, I get it. But for something like this, if you really try to put...
being old isn't apparently a problem for Lando or literally anyone else in this movie, because the whole point of this movie is, oh, hey, you new guys are okay, but we're still better than you.
Yeah. But see, that was the thing, is
Which
just
is what
like...
people want.
Like, if you're gonna try and make a dramatic moment, you still want... You may... Something to help make it dramatic is to show that people are really pulling out all the stops to get this done, right?
Yep.
Wedge being old, well, and Lando being old, he already said that his piloting days are over, so that you kind of get it there because he decides to put that aside and pilot something.
Except that he's still just...
Except, yeah, he's fine. He just ran up and shot a dude with a crossbow, like bullseyed him literally in the eye. He can't fly something anymore, you know? Anyway.
Well, and especially it's like, because you're right, Wedge is an X-Wing pilot, and one of the best.
Yeah.
So, the X-Wing he flew might be old. Put him in one of the new ones.
Well, Ray flew an old one just fine.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, but it's like, what? Somebody couldn't be like, here, I'll lend you my X-Wing, master class pilot, you know? I'll get in the crappier ship, why don't you take this, you know?
Yeah. And so you had a bunch of things like that. We talked about some of the other actors that were basically just cameos. Although, did you notice who the bartender was?
John Williams.
That was John Williams.
Yes, I did.
So, I did like that. That was nice to have him, a little nod to him, but...
I just like that the only John Williams cameo we got in all of Star Wars was John Williams looking at what was going on and then just shaking his head.
Yeah, that's fair.
Next up on my list was a lackluster ending battle, but we've already talked about that. And lackluster saber fights. And I was fine with the Death Star fight because A, we'd already seen it, and B, because I thought that was just, we were going to get something bigger at the end, so I didn't even think about it at the time.
Yep.
My next thought was one of my own that did not come from Reddit, was just that JJ watches way too much anime. Way too much anime. As far as like the visual tropes, not like the good actual like engaging.
No, I'm not
thinking anime.
I'm just curious.
I'm curious.
So
as well.
first thing we
That
see
was
of Rey.
another thing with Palpatine on that crane. I was just like, I have seen that not just in sci-fi left and right, but in like a billion anime.
Yeah. First thing we see of Rey, she's in the Avatar state.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
Floating rocks around her, floating
Even
there,
in like
meditating.
the little crossed X circle orbit things,
Yeah.
even like literally Avatar Last Airbender, he's doing that in many episodes.
And you had kind of started to get a little bit of that in The Last Jedi, where they started to float when they were meditating really deeply. But that was still more of what seemed like to be just a result of them being so in touch with the Force. But she was still in control of it. She floats herself down, basically flying, like we had talked about a little while ago, or someone had talked about it.
Yeah.
And then you had...
Well, those sort of things are what I like to call, like, this is artificial coolness.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, well, we have to make things cool or people will get bored, so we have to do something. It's like, I'm sorry, we've got an entire prequel trilogy of Yoda meditating by just sitting on a cushion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if Yoda doesn't need to float, neither does Rey. Like, it's artificial, like, oh, it's not cool to just sit on something. She floats when she meditates. And when we do this, we have to do it badass in this way. And this is going to be super cool in this way. We can't just do a thing.
Well, and it also destroys the spirituality of the Force.
Mm-hmm. It turns it into a superpower.
Yes, exactly. Where you look at the prequels where Yoda is meditating and it's not about the flashy exterior stuff. It's about the important interior stuff. And so he's just sitting there and connecting with the Force and feeling things, and he's not doing anything because he's focused internally.
Yep.
Where Rey is like, well, let's see what I can do while I sit here and think about the Force. Oh, I know, let's spin some rocks.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's funny, too, because I'm just like, in Last Jedi, I had no problem with Luke floating a couple inches above, because I was like, Luke is straining himself extremely, and it's
Right.
Luke. You've got all these people being like, oh, Luke has to be super cool, and I'm disappointed that movie didn't make him cool, but there's a ton of little things like that where I'm like, Luke can literally catch himself from falling with the Force. We've never seen anyone do that. Like, Luke is more experienced, but it's not super flashy. It's subtle. But JJ doesn't understand that word. Like, he's never heard it.
Leading me to my other way too much anime example of Palpatine's unlimited power times 10 or to 11. See, and that was the thing. If you were to take all of that and just make it drawings, it would have been an anime episode thing, superpower thing. And also the sabers at the end, which also is another like plot inconsistency for me. So the idea was that Rey has to kill Palpatine, and that will cause the spirits of the Sith to inhabit Rey, right?
Right.
Yep.
So they've kind of gotten around that by kind of saying that Palpatine's killing himself, but Rey is reflecting it. So isn't that still an argument as to Rey
Well, but
is
she's
the one
not
doing
angry
the
now.
killing? Right.
Like, turns out the solution was it's just like, strike me down in your anger. I won't be angry. Wait, no, you can't just do that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, see, and that was my thought. Is we did have that discussion about why when Palpatine is goading Luke in Return of the Jedi, and there is something about striking him down, even though that's an arguably good thing, would cause him to fall to the dark side.
because he's doing it in anger.
Because
But
he's in
also,
anger, yeah.
which I would also argue that that's part of why Darth Vader steps in there, is because it's like he's not there yet. Like,
It's on. I heard on a different podcast I was listening to, a political podcast. They were talking about the host was asked about, like, is spanking your kid child abuse? And the host was basically like, well, look, if you're like losing your temper when your kid does something, like your kid breaks a rule, and you're like flying off the handle, and you're spanking them super hard, and you're angry, and you're out of control, like, that is kind of child abuse because you're not in control. But if you're like, look, kid, here was the rule. You knew this was the rule. You broke it. You knew that this was the punishment attached to it. Therefore, you're going to get 3 spankings or whatever it is. You know, like, that's the difference between like discipline and
Yep.
abuse.
Well, that's one of the first times as a parent that I ever spanked my child was like, no, okay, you need to understand that this is dangerous. You cannot go in that area or you cannot do that thing.
Yeah.
It's like, this is important, but you're too little for me to get you to comprehend this. So I am going to spank you so that you understand because you can understand that this is not a thing you should do.
Yeah.
And
exactly. And that's a difference rather than you like, flying off the handle and you start, kicking him around the house or whatever. Like, and that's the thing with Luke is killing Palpatine in anger. Yeah, killing Palpatine is still a good thing, but it's the anger that makes it dark side because you're giving in to that loss of control. And I think you're exactly right with Rey. It could be like, okay, well, I'm not angry. I'm definitely in control here. And you need to go.
Well, but even with that, though, is that when she had finally resigned to actually kill Palpatine before she started sensing with things, she wasn't angry.
No.
It was just okay, I have to do this to save my friends. So why would that have worked?
Yeah,
But,
it's all just hand waving him. It's just like, well, we wanted to set up the same sort of problem as before, where it's like striking down in anger, right? Okay, but we still needed to kill him though, so let's just have her kill him now.
Especially because it could have been so easy to just kind of repeat some of the similar things Kylo did to her in Snoke's throne room, where he's just kind of tearing her down. If Palpatine was actually being like, oh, your friends are dying, you're still nothing. Oh, well, actually, no, that's right. She is something, so that doesn't make sense anymore either.
Yeah.
But just to finish with the anime analogy, there was also the 2 lightsabers are more reflective than 1.
Yeah.
And you also requires walking forward, which is, again, is just you see all over the place in anime. If someone's inside a beam of power, they have to walk forward, to reflect.
Yeah.
I don't know. Next, we have Rey's inconsistent force sensitivity, which, in continuing to think about this, well, she was distraught at the time. She couldn't tell Chewie was still alive after she blew up the transport.
But for some reason, she could instantly sense his presence the second he came around. I was just like, what? That's not how the Force works.
Yeah.
That's not how any of this works.
And see, and my only thing was that, she was so distraught at surprising herself with the Force lightning that maybe she wasn't in tune, but again,
it's weak. And it's
weak.
basically the Force is frequently used in this movie as just plot spackle.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we don't have a reason for that to happen. Force it. Use the Force. Use the Force. And some of those are set up pretty well. Like Kylo's grabbing the necklace off of her, and then it's like, okay, where is this from? Let's find that. I thought that was
creative.
And they used it several times. I'm like, okay, whatevs. I'm not angry about. I don't love it, but I'm not angry at it.
Yeah.
But it's just like where it's like, okay, we need her to know Chewie's here. Just have her sense him, and then have them sense this. Oh, and they can sense this. It's like, oh, turns out Leia sensed the entire future.
Non-force sensitive Finn apparently can just now all of a sudden
now he is
sense
force
things.
sensitive.
Yeah.
because that's a fan theory, and this movie is all about jamming as many fan theories into.
And so apparently that means in the future, anytime anyone even has a brushing glance with a lightsaber, they're now force sensitive. Yeah. Which also means Han must have been force sensitive.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we all know now, confirmed in episode 9, that you can't actually touch a lightsaber without using the Force.
Well, and that explains why Han was able to shoot at people without looking.
True.
He had the Force.
He had the
Yeah.
Force.
Everybody has the Force.
Yep.
Poe was really the next person in command after Leia dies? Really? I mean, sure, there's been a stretch of time between
It's true.
Last Jedi.
There was the old lady with like the scraggly hair and the big nose from episode 8, who was all with Holdo. Doesn't she outrank Poe?
You would think so.
Like, I thought that was the impression I
since
got.
Poe got demoted?
I mean, and let's say Poe even got re-put in his position in the intervening time.
She's still ahead of him.
But in episode 8, she clearly is like the next lady in charge, like after Leia and Holdo.
Yeah.
Like, she's the one taking charge in episode 8 and stuff, and even in this movie.
I can sort of gloss over that as just sort of the end of The Last Jedi was going like, oh, don't follow me, follow him. It's basically this, like, Poe is the spiritual successor to leading the rebellion, whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's lazy storytelling, but...
So, there should have been a subplot where this lady was upset at Poe for jumping her in rank. That was a joke, Chris. Come on.
Okay, sorry. I can't tell anymore after that.
For real.
Dio. Did he need to be there?
Was that?
Did he do
is that
anything?
the robot?
To be there?
Is that the droid from Fallen Order?
No.
No.
He didn't need to be there per se. I wasn't angry at him though. Like I was when he started talking English, I was like, "Whoa, there, what?"
Yes.
But I didn't mind him as much as I thought I would.
But it's like he was cute, but I mean, he was basically
he's there for us to market.
Yeah, he was just the graduated porg.
Yeah, that whole first act being completely fluff. So oh my gosh, this drove me nuts. So I'm sitting there, I obviously haven't seen the movie before, so it's not like I have the benefit of hindsight. I'm in the movie when they get to the ship, and I'm just going, holy crap, this is all fluff.
Yep.
This whole first thing is complete filler for the movie. It's to pad the runtime. Oh my gosh! I'm like, I already know. I don't know what's coming next.
It's there so that we can have time to get across all the bits of information that we want to give you.
But
like it's not. There's no logical reason for any of this to happen.
It was so terrible because I'm sitting there going, having not seen the movie before, there's no way for me to know exactly what's coming next, and I can already tell that none of this is going to matter to anything in the rest of the movie. This is bad. This is bad, and especially like. Going back to the introducing interesting ideas and then doing nothing with them, like here's this whole culture, they have this celebration once every 42 years. All right, now move along.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and this also made me curious. I'm just going, so clearly this is some sort of culturally, if not religiously important event for the people of this valley. And y'all are just like running through what is apparently a choreographed, culturally significant dance number. Like, so where we live, there is an actual Hindu temple nearby.
Hare Krishna temple.
Hare Krishna temple. Thank you. And I've been to a few of their religious ceremonies that are open to the public. And though I am not a member of their religion, when I go, I do my best to be respectful because I'm going, though I do not share these particular beliefs, I understand that you do and that these are important to you people. So I will follow along with what you're doing out of respect and to not throw off an event that is important to you out of respect.
They just walk right through.
A-holes are just like, oh, hey, let me just, sorry, excuse me, pardon me, let me just walk through. It's like, are you serious? Like, that is so, and maybe I'm just weird or whatever, but I was like, I cannot believe how completely insensitive these guys are being to these people.
I had the similar thought when they were doing it. I was like, well, either they're walking through the performance or literally everyone is dancing like this, and they're going to stand up because they're not dancing anyway, which isn't going to help them blend in. You know, it's just like, what?
Yeah, and it didn't look like everybody was dancing that was like in that culture. But I'm going, enough of them are, and it's all choreographed, so this is clearly like an important thing for you guys, and you're just totally like, piss off, I need to get over here.
It seemed like the first thing that they walked through did look like it was more of a performance, because then they get around and everyone else is kind of doing separate things. But it's like they walk through the stage.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, they walk
but
through,
it's like, how disrespectful. It's like, there's like, the Macy's Day Parade, and I'm just going to walk, not even between the floats, or I'm going to like walk through the marching band.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, what is wrong with you? Gosh, you guys, you're so awful. And then just coincidence of coincidences that Lando happens to be there. Oh, jeez.
Well, see, and that was my next point, was convenient Lando is convenient.
Yeah, he
really
is
like
convenient.
I mean, sure, it's okay, Leia can
well, and I mean, it's Star Wars. It's improbable.
We have talked about improbabilities, and sometimes you do need to have convenient things. But it was just like he rescued them and then he disappears.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that, and then magically reappears.
Yeah, and it's just like, well, okay.
We can all thank Lando though for being way more popular than Leia. It's like Leia sends out a distress signal, nobody comes. Lando goes around. It's like, oh yeah, wait, Lando's in charge now?
Wait, Lando's getting in on this?
Is Leia still around? No, she died. Oh, awesome,
good.
We're there.
Well, and it takes them like half an hour to
like,
compile
we're gonna visit
thousands
everywhere.
of ships.
It's like,
okay, and then there was another thing though. Was that did they mention something about hyperlanes being blocked, so like the inner rim and the outer rim had been separated somehow?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, because it doesn't really make sense with how hyperspace was working anyway. Hyperlanes are supposed to just be like currents that get you there faster, but you can still get there anyway. But I thought someone said something about some separation between the inner and outer rims, but whatever. Luke's lesson back on Octu. What was that? What did he even? I don't even remember what he said.
So this was on my list of good things.
I just remember
legal Chris.
The point of The Last Jedi is that Luke was wrong. Yeah. So when he was just like, I was wrong, I was like, yep, that is a good point. My disappointment in that is that It's that where Luke's lesson is like this depthful, intricate, meaningful thing. Rey's is like, I'm scared, but you should not be scared.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like that is the depth of this movie. Like,
Yeah.
Well, and then there was also he comes out by basically breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Just these lightsabers should be respected.
Yeah.
Jedi should
that.
always respect their lights, which honestly I would have
Yeah.
actually thought was funny. Where it's just like, this is Luke acknowledging that I was wrong last time.
wrong.
It's just within the context of this movie that feels more like a middle finger to anyone who likes
That's
The
Yeah.
Last
exactly
Jedi.
what I was going to say. And I put it in there because I was like, okay, I know I am the exact fan that they're pandering to with this line, so it makes me feel warm and fuzzy, but I don't appreciate the pandering where they're like, that a Jedi shouldn't disrespect their
Well, I gotta
lightsaber. And
say-
I was like, this is clearly you guys going wink, wink, all of
Yeah.
you that didn't like
Like
Last
I
Jedi.
said in our Last Jedi episode, I don't get the reference for that particular lightsaber. It's like, oh, this was the original lightsaber that we saw on screen. It's like, we have to love this and embrace it and always adore it. It got used to slaughter children. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. It's glorious and perfect and wonderful, and if you don't bow in reverence before it, you don't understand or appreciate Star Wars. I'm like, oh, go somewhere else, please.
Yeah.
Also, Luke had to hide Leia's lightsaber when he was in seclusion.
Yeah. Why didn't Leia keep her lightsaber?
Well, she says that she...
Because she had seen the future and knew
Yeah.
that someone needed it. Again, it's just like, convenient force visions are convenient.
yeah. And and even if somebody needs it in the future, it's like, what? So
Why
you
don't
can't
you
use
have
it in the meantime?
Yeah.
Well, it's not like Luke was using his either. Like, he was...
Yeah.
He basically... I think the implication is basically he kept it because Leia said someone would need it. So he got rid of his because he wasn't going to be a Jedi, but, well, someday someone would need it because Leia said so. And I'm just like, oh, y'all. Oh, y'all, really? This entire plot is just cobbled around, oh, Leia saw the future, so she planned everything. And Palpatine saw the future, so he planned everything. But fortunately, Palpatine is never capable of predicting his own death, ever. He literally sees everything that's coming in the future at all times, except for his own death.
Twice!
Thrice.
Thrice.
Snoke was Palpatine. That was one of the messages
yeah.
of this, is Snoke was under Palpatine's
Okay,
control.
yeah.
Like, no, Palpatine can never see his own death coming.
You know what I'm excited for? Episode 10, when Palpatine returns.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Palpatine.
For reals. Because why not, right?
I know.
You're telling me Palpatine only had one cloning
contingency
facility?
plan?
No.
Never. The
Yeah.
man was brilliant and a god among men.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not worth fighting.
Also, another smaller nitpick, but the Luke finally raises his X-Wing out of the swamp. Okay, sure. But,
Henry.
he's just now proving to himself and or to us that he is now powerful enough and understands the Force well enough to get his X-Wing out of a swamp. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of seems kind
It's
of
one of those
potatoes.
things where I'm going, okay, after Kyler, calm down. This is space fantasy, not... Oh! Sorry, that's what I said last night. But like, I'm going, that's been sitting underwater for 10 years,
And she's just
and
gonna
it's
fly off in it.
space-worthy?
Yeah. Well, but see, here's the thing: is if Luke had just done it and just set it down and it was no big deal,
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't have a problem.
Like, if it had
But
been
was
an understated thing.
Yeah.
But it's this, like, pose of her, like, looking over her shoulder, like, how is that happening? As though we don't all know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
him standing there all smug and like, that's right.
Well, but he's
I
also
always was this powerful.
he's also standing in the same position that he did in Empire because he has a funny way he holds his hand when
Yes,
he's
he
using the
does.
Force. And so it's just like, yeah, okay, I get it. It's a callback, right?
Yeah.
We understand, but
It's heavy-handed as hell.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next point of Chewie's getting the medal
Oh,
was
God,
so
yeah.
ham-fisted.
Well,
Oh,
I thought I had reached a point by that point where I was just like, yeah, this movie is just utterly cliche and pandery in every possible way. And then Maz came over and was like, Chewie, and I was like, oh, did she get her boyfriend?
Yeah.
Like,
I thought they were
Yeah.
going to like,
I'd
get a
actually
kiss.
be
Get a
okay
kiss,
with that.
yeah.
I'd actually be up for that. And then she gives him a medal, and I was like, are you effing? This is so stupid.
Well, what's really funny is both Chris and I simultaneously at that point just went,
Yeah.
it was hilarious.
Yep, and Kate was doing the same thing on my other
Oh,
side.
yeah, I'm sure. Because I had the exact same reaction when Maz was like, where's Chewie? I'm like, oh, go kiss your
Yeah.
boyfriend, Maz. Like, if there's one bright, shining moment in this movie, you're going to get to kiss your boyfriend, Chewie,
Yes.
and I'm going to love that.
And
Yes.
Chewie will finally not be alone.
yeah, I was like, I'm like, of all the things to pay fan service to, that one I'm okay with. Like, let's do this.
I thought that was
and then
hilarious.
she's like,
Force
here, have a
Awakens.
medal. And I'm like, okay.
Like that almost more than anything else in this movie, that was just them going like, we're not even pretending here. We literally just made a list of ways that we can pander to the fans, and we shoved as many of them in here as we could.
We made a list of things we found on Reddit, and we're addressing them. Yeah.
For reals.
Um,
But one more thing, Ross, that I was reminded of. So, at many points during this movie, I had to remind myself, and literally told myself in my head, okay, Kyler, remember, Star Wars is a space fantasy, not science fiction. Let it go. Let it go. When the door opens in the throne room in the Death Star wreckage,
I forgot about. Yeah.
where I'm just like, really? Okay, so the reactor core of the Death Star explodes the Death Star from the inside out, killing everyone on board and disintegrating most of the Death Star. But this one door's circuitry works
And still has power.
and still has power after 30 years of corrosive seawater.
How about,
Really?
how about that knife fitting perfectly to the wreckage of the Death Star with
Yes.
directions to the point on the Death Star? It's like, so the wind and tides have not moved that at all? Or just someone was
Yeah.
so freaking prescient that they knew exactly how to
I'm
create
fine
this?
with millions of tons of metal not getting super budged in the water.
Sure, but
so I'm
but
okay
nothing,
with that one.
Nothing getting worn away, nothing
But-
getting knocked over.
Yeah, but the fact that you've got to stand on this exact point on this bluff.
And she just happens to be standing there.
Yeah,
yes.
and like if you're 100 yards one way or 100 yards the other way, you're going to end up in a completely different part of the wreckage. Like, okay.
And I'm also like, okay, so who made this knife and when and why? Like, why make
Yes.
a knife that will guide you to wreckage containing a thing instead of just taking the thing?
Right,
Like,
exactly.
what? This is so effing dumb. Like, I don't...
I was also bothered by that throne room was not the same shape as what it was in Return of the Jedi. It was the
Yes.
same shape, but it was
Yeah,
it was
Ross
thinner.
and I were talking about
Yeah.
this last night, that it's meant to be the same, but it is clearly far more cramped than the actual throne room we see in episode 6.
And was there... I don't remember seeing his
'Cause
chair on any
remember-
scaffolding that we know has to be there, because that's where Luke hid. It looked like it was just regular plates.
I thought there was some scaffolding that I was like,
Was there?
okay, I think that's where they were fighting, but it was a little hard to tell. But like, because I mean, there's quite a lot of room when you think about that saber fight in episode 6. I mean, they're all over the place in the throne room, and it's all in that 1/4 of that tower.
and what we see here is not
and
that big.
so she comes out of the same door basically that Luke does, and I'm like, there's like 1/4 the distance to the throne as there was in the original movie.
Yeah.
Like, no, nope.
Okay, so now here I start going out of order as random things were occurring to me.
Sure.
So here's something that's actually out of the movie, which also annoyed me. So I think it was in the opening crawl, they talked about the message that all of a sudden had appeared from Palpatine.
Yeah.
Right? Did you know that message actually appears somewhere?
Wait, what?
There is a message that has actually been released, like that is like the message that the universe is supposed to be hearing. It appears in the Star Wars launch event in Fortnite.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
Fortnite did an event.
about
I think
this.
it's even still going. Where they just had like they did with the Marvel event, where you could be Thanos for a bit. You can be Rey in Fortnite matches now. They had this thing where JJ actually came out and they had made him an in-game model, and they had like a Falcon in-game and everything, and where he talked about this thing, showed him a sneak preview, and apparently that message showed up in that event.
And I just want to say also, I was going to say this at the beginning, and I completely spaced it because I was so excited to talk about how much Palpatine is dumb in this. With Rise of Skywalker, they put out so many trailers and TV spots and things that I was like, I watched the 3 main trailers,
and then I
and
stopped.
that was it. I didn't watch any of the
couldn't
TV
even keep
spots. I didn't watch
track of
any.
them, so I just was like,
Yeah,
whatevs.
because I was like, I want as little spoiled for me as possible. I don't want to disappoint myself because it's like, oh, well, I saw this in the trailer already, so it didn't impact me the way it was supposed to. So I was like, okay, I've seen the 3 main trailers, and that's it. That's all I'm going to see. So it's not like all of these opinions. It's not like I was disappointed by these things because I'd already seen them, and so like the effect was lessened for me or something like that. It was I saw what they wanted me to see beforehand, and then I went and saw the movie, and still disappointed. So anyway, go ahead, Russ.
Well, and I mean that was still just it. I actually did keep up as much as I could on those TV spots, and most of it was actually stuff that you would see in the trailer. It just might have been like the next camera shot. You know, I mean, it was just. I mean, there wasn't anything really revealing in most of them. Another little nitpick: they mix up ion cannons and turbo lasers. Turbo lasers are green.
Yes.
They said fire the ion cannons,
Yes.
and all of a sudden you had all these green lasers coming out.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, so
Ion
we're
cannons-
just going to destroy them then, not...
Ion cannons are generally blue. I mean, we haven't really... I don't know. We haven't really seen that in the
No,
movies.
I mean,
but-
that's true. Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway.
I remember thinking it was odd that they chose ion cannons there.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
was
and
my
why would
extent of
they?
the thought,
Yeah, unless they wanted to... Anyway.
Yeah.
Rey's alignment flip, but not really.
Oh, God.
And see, I was waiting for such a little bit more meaty storyline of her actually really having to wrestle with the whole dark side stuff, but it didn't really
That's
pan
not
out.
the kind of story we're telling.
Yeah.
Everything
And
that
is
was
simple
so
and easy, and we're
disappointing.
jumping over all of it.
That was so disappointing, too, because I'm like, okay, Negare.
Yeah.
I'd be down to see some of that. I want, even, and I thought it was going to be a Force vision, which turns out it was.
Yep.
But I was like, I want to see a little more of that. I want to see Rey going, well, maybe the dark side isn't so bad. I want to, like we see with Luke a little bit, where he's going, well, maybe, maybe I should give into my anger and just end this. I'm so frustrated with you,
Yeah.
But then it's literally like, come on, Rey, join the dark side. And we're done.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and see, and I kind of thought they were going for where the good guy and the bad guy flip, that kind of trope, story trope, which I would have been okay with. That would have been more interesting to me because we hadn't seen that
it
in
would have
Star Wars
definitely been
before.
more interesting than what they gave
But
us.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would have, Chris.
They didn't have time to make that work either.
No.
yeah.
But it would have been more interesting.
Well,
Yeah, I'll grant you that. Yeah. Almost anything would.
yeah.
Kate had this video that she tried to get me to watch beforehand where it was literally someone just reading out this atrocious fanfic. Like if someone had written their own script for episode 9, and it was bad. It was everything bad that a fanfic can be. And it was only like 1 or 2 notches below this. Like, and she,
Wow.
that's why, and she was just like, you should watch this because that way your expectations will be as low as they can possibly get. And she came out and she was like, that might have been as bad as that fanfic. Like that was almost like, holy cow.
yeah. Palpatine wants to kill Rey, and then doesn't.
But then he does.
And then he does.
And then he
You're
doesn't.
right. Yeah. Well, because he starts off, he's like, "Hey, Kylo, go kill the chick." And actually, for most of the movie, he is. But then at the end, he's like, "I never wanted you dead. You're supposed to be here." It's just like,
Well, you see, Palpatine is so in tune with the dark side that he saw it all coming, and he knew that she wouldn't.
So Snoke was under Palpatine's control, but he told Kylo Ren to murder her, even though Palpatine was supposed to be bringing her to... Wait,
yeah.
that makes no effing sense.
Yeah.
The Snoke cloning vats. So I have more of an issue with this because
Hilarious.
Yeah.
I was just like, you literally just gave me a giant jar full of Snoke.
Snoke bits.
It's like
Yeah.
pickled Snoke. That is hilarious.
and
That
I'm-
is so stupid.
Pickled Snoke is actually a delicacy on Endor.
I didn't so much have a problem with that, like in the context of the story. It was more of the remarks from JJ in the past where he's like, "Yeah, you're going to see that Palpatine was pulling the strings all along." No, this is just you retconning, right?
Right.
I mean, it other than Kylo's conversation with Vader's helmet in The Force Awakens, it seems like, or it can be argued that he is in communication with something. It obviously didn't make sense it being Anakin, but when he says, "Show me again the power of the darkness," they've had some sort of exchange before. That's the only sort of tie-in I can see that actually there was something else pulling the strings. Other than that, it was just, no, this is just JJ retconning like a mofo. The other thing that I was just a little bit annoyed with was what was the significance of burying the lightsabers in the sand.
Yeah, I know, right?
I mean,
just to bury
It's
Luke and
sentimental.
Leia
It's
next
supposed to be. It's like, this is symbolically burying them.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, it's not. It's just dumb.
yeah.
It's just dumb.
Yeah.
I thought that was on the better end of the dumb things, though.
Sure.
In this movie.
Yeah, I'll grant that.
Yeah. Also noticeably absent from the Force Ghost vision there was Ben. You would think that would also be...
Yeah.
I expected to see him pop up like Anakin does in Return of the Jedi, but no, just
My
looking
suspicion is that Adam Driver hit a point in filming where he's just like, no, I'm done. This is stupid. I'm done. I'm not doing any more of this. F it.
Yeah. That's all my bad things.
Okay. So
Be quick, Chris.
I will
We're
do
on
my
the way
best.
over
You know what? Can we just make this week's
Sure.
episode? I think that would be easier for me to get edited on time.
Okay.
Rather than trying to do a Nerf Nugget and an episode, let's just make
Merry
this the
Christmas.
episode. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a really badly written movie. That is my primary complaint. Like, I don't give a damn about the retconning. I don't give a damn about this just being JJ going like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna ignore all that. It's like, I don't care. I don't care about Rey being a Palpatine. I don't care about Palpatine being alive still. Like, I do think it's dumb, but really, not that bothered by it. Like, it's just like, I got out of that and I was just like, I look forward to all of the people being all smug a-holes about like, oh, you just didn't like this because it was correcting The Last Jedi. And I was like, actually, you know what? I am a little floored to realize that I don't care. I feel nothing. I have burnt out any feeling I ever had through this movie. I have emerged on the other side, reborn out of this crap. Well, like Andy Dufresne, and waded through this sewer and came out clean on the other side. But no, I don't care. All I care about, like, I'm just like, you know what? I have been preaching for so long to just like, all right, try and divorce this from what came before. Try and see this in its own merits, blah, 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 blah. So you know what? Don't care. Not going to address any of that. Let's just talk about how this movie is a colossally badly written movie. This might be worse than Rogue One as far as writing goes. Like, it is a mess. And the main thing it reminds me of actually is Game of Thrones Season 8. Whereas like Game of Thrones Season 8 was basically an outline that they didn't bother fleshing out. Like, it just jumped from moment to moment to character development to character development.
I haven't made that connection, but that's a really good analogy.
Yeah. And that's what this movie does. Like, I told these guys right after the showing, I was like, okay, so my headcanon for Rogue One is that this is just a rather novice group of role players playing a game, because that's the only way that plot makes sense. And my headcanon for Rise of Skywalker is that this is a couple 5-year-olds, like, that JJ gave a couple 5-year-olds a bunch of action figures and said, here, do whatever you want, and wrote down everything they said, and that's this movie. Because that's the only way, because like the character development and the plot twists and everything are just straight out of a pair of 5-year-olds smashing action figures together and going, look, they're kissing. Like, they have feelings now. It's just like, oh, well, Ben has been super bad, and he was bad, but then she stabbed him and then healed him, and now he's good. Because he's good now. Because Daddy said so, because we learned from Rogue One that that's how people develop as people, is Daddy said so. So he hallucinated Daddy saying so, and now he's good. And that's like, I was just like, that is Kylo Ren's redemption arc is, I'm going to convert you to the dark side. Stab, healed. I'm good now.
Chris, no, I've got it better. So it's two kids, two siblings playing, like you said, with their action figures. One of them is being the bad guy, and he's always been like beating up on the little sister with the action figures, and so she finally gets him. She finally kills him, and then he gets all angry. You killed me, whatever. And then Dad has to come in and be like, look, stop the fighting. You know what? You're good now. Now you're both on the same side. Can you just get along and play? Okay, we'll both be good now.
I liked that better as Lego Movie 2. Which is literally what Lego Movie 2 was.
Yeah.
There you go. So there it is.
Yeah, no, it's really just this heavy-handed, like, we're skipping any actual character development because we know we can get away with that with Star Wars, because that's what Rogue One and Mandalorian have showed us. We don't actually need character. We don't actually need to develop anything. People will just supply whatever the cliche thing is here, and this is going for broke on cliche. Like, I talked about how Mandalorian recontextualized my thinking, where I was like, Rogue One made me like, I guess a lot of Star Wars fans don't care if something's, kind of cliche as long as they're getting what other things that they want. But then Mandalorian, I was like, oh wow, apparently a lot of Star Wars fans actively want that from their Star Wars. It's not that they don't care, it's that that's what they want. And now I watched this and I went, I'm starting to realize that for a good chunk of those fans, it's not even that they actively want it, it's that they literally cannot tell the difference. They do not understand storytelling in the slightest. Like, this is the equivalent of trying to give a kid, like, delicious, like amazing homemade Italian cooking that Kyler can make, and that kid throws a fit because it's not SpaghettiOs. Like, because all they want is SpaghettiOs, and we all know that SpaghettiOs are best. And I'm like, no, this is crap writing. Like, there's no consistency, there's no real development at all. Like, Rey's the closest to having an actual arc here, and her arc basically amounts to, oh, now I'm nervous because there's something weird about my past. Oh, it turns out I have to be evil. No, you don't. Don't be afraid. Okay. Wait, no. Now I still am. Oh, wait, but Ben's here. Now I'm not. Like, I mean, it is such hackneyed crap writing with, like, no subtlety, no tact whatsoever. The writing in this movie, too, like, so it's just, this is a movie that just, like, straight up just doesn't even bother with realistic dialogue or anything like that. Like, there are some moments of realism in it, but a lot of the time, like, my favorite example is when Hux shoots the stormtroopers and then literally just states, "I'm the spy." And I was watching that and I was like, I can't tell if that was supposed to be funny or not. Like, we're having him just state he's the spy because it's funny, because that's the level of writing of this entire movie. This is a movie where the bad guys, like, or like Futurama, like the devil's hands are idle playthings, where the devil's just like, this show is as lousy as it is brilliant. You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry. And it's like, no, this is that, only without all the humorous context. This is just, that makes me feel angry, over and over and over again. I am angry. Well, I am sad because I am sad now. And I mean, I'm just like, this is... Like, I'm like, if you liked it, fine, whatever, but it's not a well-written movie. Like, if you've been listening to me talking about storytelling for over a year now, you've either reached a point where you can respect that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to storytelling, or you're just going to ignore me in perpetuity. So, like, either just accept from me, because I'm not digging into this movie. I'm not touching it. I don't want to harsh people's buzz, even. Like, if you liked it, okay, fine, whatever, go like it. I'm not going to get in your way because I don't want to be what the Last Jedi haters were. But it's bad. It's badly written. It is inconsistent. And it's basically, it's similar to Rogue One, where it's basically only getting away with this because it's Star Wars, and we know how the plot's supposed to go, so we're just filling in the gaps on our own and just going like, oh, that was well written. And I'm like, no, this is the definition of bad writing. And so it's, I mean, in the pacing, like, this is basically two movies crammed into one. This is just everything that Rian Johnson didn't use of JJ's second movie. JJ just decided, I can shove it in here anyway. And it's just breakneck pace from one thing to the next. It doesn't have time to give anything any sort of emotional weight. Like, Rey finding out she's a Palpatine, that wasn't a moment of weight. It was basically just a, oh, I know something about you. No, you don't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Well, I'm going to come up there and tell you. No, you won't. Well, fine, you're here. Tell me. You're a Palpatine. Okay, bye. Like, that's basically how it went. And I was just like, oh my word, this is craptastic. And then also, it's just so pandery. I'm like, I don't mind giving fans what they want, quote unquote, but there is a line. Like, this is the equivalent of like, basically, like, pandering to fans. Fans don't know what good storytelling is often. They don't necessarily know. They've got a list of things they want that have nothing to do with story. And so it's like fluff, it's like candy or dessert, you know, and it's like this movie literally feels like JJ just went, okay, let's make a list of everything anyone has ever said anywhere online that they wanted from Star Wars, all the complaints about The Last Jedi, everything that people say they need. Let's just make a list of all of it and then see how much we can jam into one movie. Mm-hmm. And that's what they did instead of having an actual story with actual character arcs, is just jam as much fan service as they can in there. But that's when it comes to storytelling, that's basically the equivalent of just listing every flavor that you like. It's like, ooh, I like caramel. Ooh, and I like cotton candy. And I like strawberries. And I like, you know, I like twigs, and I like lasagna, and then just pouring it into one thing instead of using an actual recipe. Like, using that list of things you like as a recipe. That's what this movie has done. Yep. And it is so heavy-handed, and it undercuts the story constantly, where it's just like, okay, for a moment there, Rey accidentally zapped this ship and blew it up, which I'm like, okay, first of all, wow, that's really powerful Force lightning, but okay, whatevs. Yeah. It's nothing compared to the even more powerful, even more unlimited power later, so... But it's like she zaps that, it blows up, and I'm like, well, that was a crummy way to kill Chewie, but at least they had the guts to maybe possibly do it.
Yeah.
Like, that would actually have emotional heft and weight. Like, people are talking about, I've seen people online being like, oh, Rey's story was so meaningful, and I'm like, no. It only has emotion because they are lazily relying on the fact that you don't give a shit because you already know these characters. That's it. This is bad writing. If they had left that, if it had been like, holy crap, she just lost control and it cost the life of someone she cares about, that would have been awesome. But then immediately they're just like, oh, just kidding. We put him on a different ship when you weren't looking. It's okay. He's still alive. Don't hate us for doing anything bad whatsoever. And it's like 3PO losing his memory. I was just like, okay, this is a meaningful thing for Anthony Daniels to get to do.
Oh, so I was going to bring this up, but Anthony Daniels, when he said, like, I felt like a table ornament or whatever for this movie, dude, you were.
Yep.
I'm sorry to say, but you were. You were there to get stepped on and stepped over by everybody on screen.
Yep.
It was literally like, give us what we need and then shut up, 3PO. You don't matter.
Which is so funny because he talked so much through this film. He
had lots of lines.
I think he had more lines in this film than he had, I think, probably through any of the trilogies.
But it was totally derisive,
right,
how he was used. Often, it was totally just like, you don't matter, 3PO. Shut up.
I was okay with a lot of it, but I was just like, if that moment had been allowed to stand, I was like, okay, it's not a character death, so the fans can't get too upset. And it's something that's been done to 3PO before, so again, you can't get too upset, but this time, 3PO is actively making a choice that I am going to give up my memory of everyone that I care about in order to try and help save everyone, even if it's just an utterly stupid hackneyed plot device that it's like, oh, I can't speak this one language because reasons, so that it's convenient, so that we have an excuse to erase my memory now. Like, it's not good writing.
You couldn't write it down?
Yeah, exactly. You can't write it out. You can't. They're sitting there like, hasn't R2 backed up your memory? And he's just like, oh no, I wouldn't allow that. And I'm like, so can BB-8?
Well, but then he did.
Well, yeah. But first of all, yeah. But I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, doesn't BB-8 have basically the same capabilities as R2? Like, he's just the updated version of the R2 units. Like, is there a reason he can't just back up 3PO's memory right now?
Well, and what sort of memory issues had R2 ever had?
I know.
Was that just
that was just an excuse to try and make it seem like this was really happening, basically. And so it's like, I was like, okay, cool. That is actually a meaningful character choice. It has depth and actual, and then later it's just like, oh, just kidding. We're taking that back because we don't want anyone to be even slightly upset at this. Like, it's okay. Everything's okay. Like, this movie is basically, this is the helicopter parent of movies. It's like, the last movie was like, hey, life sucks and it can be hard, but it's okay because Star Wars is important and good and can help you get through it. And this movie's like, oh, no, you can't tell my precious babies that life might be hard. No, don't listen to that. Everything is always going to be easy and simple and perfect and will always work out for everyone you ever loved and everything will be perfect. And I was watching that and I was laughing because I had a conversation about The Last Jedi online the other day where this guy was complaining about, he's just like, oh, this is just for snowflakes who just da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was sitting there like, you've spent 2 years complaining about this movie because it wasn't what you wanted. None of your stuff has held up in our conversation here, but you're still pissed about it anyway because it challenged your way of thinking slightly. And the people who like this are the snowflakes? and that's basically what this movie was going like, nope. Star Wars is everything it always was and will never be anything else, and it will never challenge you in any way and will be a perfectly comforting blanket for all of you because so many of its fans are such utter snowflakes that they can't handle even the slightest challenge.
The other analogy, and it's a good lesson and it's a rule that we established before this podcast even began, which is never, ever, ever give in to or apologize to the outrage mob.
Yeah.
Because it will never be enough. And when you try to pander to the outrage mob, what you get is garbage that doesn't have any sort of internal consistency. And this movie is 100% that, because you're right. It's very much like, well, we don't want to make these fans mad that are shipping Raylo, so let's have them do that. Well, we don't want to make these fans mad. We wouldn't want to make 3PO fans mad, so let's not actually wipe his memory. Yep. Well, we wouldn't want to make the Palpatine like Rey has to be somebody, right? So we don't want to make those fans mad. So let's have her be somebody.
Oh, and that's this entire thing is extremely by the numbers. Like that's one of my big complaints about the writing too. Is like this. The biggest surprise about this movie was just adjusting my head to just how cliche they were willing to be here. And normally, I watch a movie and I go, okay, so the cliche things we'd do would be here. This is where I would go with it, which is less cliche, but maybe just maybe they'll go somewhere that still makes sense that isn't any of the things I've thought about here. But like, there's this lower level below what I'm even considering that it's like, oh no, these are like the defunct tropes. These are tropes that are so overused that they have become cliche. They're so cliche that we've just stopped doing it because it's so boringly predictable.
Yeah.
And this movie, that's like, it took me like the first third or even half of this movie to completely wrap my head around the fact that that's what this movie was, is that they were digging down to the bottom of the barrel there to be as completely cliche and predictable as possible. And I was just like, and there are so many points where I was just like, and I was just like, really? Really? We're going that cliche. We're going no, he was on a different ship the whole time and everything's fine cliche. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, fine. And it kept doing that over. And by halfway through the movie, I finally reached a point where I was just like, okay, I just need to assume that they will do the most boringly cliche thing possible. And I will know exactly what's going to happen from here on out. Because I kept hitting developments and being like, they're not going to be that stupidly cliche, are they? And they were. So every time.
That is a perfect...
Yes, they were. Every time.
That is a perfect segue into something that I wanted to read. So this is a conversation that I had with a guy just earlier today. And let me just preface this by saying, I have a lot of respect for this person. He's a very decent, genuine, kind individual. I don't bear him any ill will. But he's like, oh, I love this movie. I thought it was great. And I was like, okay, I am genuinely interested in what you thought was good about this movie because maybe you're saying something that I didn't. I am perfectly open to the idea that I missed things.
I have been reading good reviews of this ever since last night, just trying to figure out what people liked about it.
Yeah, so I don't want people to think, like, my mind is fully, totally open. If you like this movie, I would love to know why and hear your reasons why, because maybe you have interpreted things in a different way than I have, and maybe I'll see it in a new light and love it. And frankly, I would like to love this movie. Yep. So I wanted to read part of our conversation. So we were talking about, he sent me this big, long, several paragraphs of this and that. And the other thing I liked that they included the Sith fleet that paid homage to the non-canonical EU video games I love dearly. Sith mysticism is fully displayed, which I actually didn't have a problem with. I'm like, okay, so we got creepy, weird, culty religion stuff for the Sith.
I was a little weirded out by his Sith chorus there. I was like, who are these people? Why are they
it didn't make any sense, but I'm going, okay, but atmosphere-wise, that seems fine for the Sith. And so then I said, I would say that the Palpatine clone resurrection story is one of the worst, most boring, and unoriginal ideas in the EU, and its inclusion here felt extremely lazy and unimaginative. And he said, disagree there, Palpatine is the most powerful Sith. He's the culmination of all Sith efforts. And he said, he also said that Palpatine did what the Sith do. They amass a fleet of world killers. And I said, right. And this was lazy in the EU and lazy in Rise of Skywalker. It turns every movie into, quote, good guys must destroy world killer blank before it kills worlds.
Yep. It happened over and over again in the EU. It's now happened 4 times in 6 movies.
This is what shocked me. He said, sure, but there's also a reason why we tell Romeo and Juliet 1,000 different ways and people still enjoy it. Reinterpreting the same trope skillfully shows the storyteller's mastery of the source story and ingenious new revitalization. It's not lazy, it's skillfully done. And so I said, I wholly disagree there. I didn't think this was skillful at all. Skillfully would be dropping hints in 7 and 8 that Palpatine was there all along. Instead, what we get is, well, Kylo needs to be redeemed and Snoke is dead, so let's bring Palpatine back, I guess? It feels like they were scrambling for ideas to make fans happy and said, hey, this old EU story about Palpatine returning was really popular, let's do that. I think this movie pretty firmly shows that there was a specific plan that JJ had in mind, that Johnson deviated from, and that they then tried to fix while still being constrained by Johnson's canon. Mm-hmm. And then I also said, responding specifically to his reinterpreting the same trope skillfully, whatever, the whole Romeo and Juliet thing, And I said also reinterpreting the same trope is very different than repeating the same trope within the same story. Romeo and Juliet is fantastic, and I enjoy many of the remakes. And there are several really good remakes out there, and I enjoy them all. But I doubt people would enjoy, let's say, a mini-series where every episode is a repeat of the Romeo and Juliet story, acted out by characters who all know each other and are aware of the choices the others have made, resulting in a Romeo and Juliet story.
Yep.
By the third episode, you'd all be saying, okay, but all of you know that the other person won't be dead. Just talk it out.
Yep.
Like, if there was like a 10-episode miniseries of Romeo and Juliet, but every episode was a different person in the same group of friends doing a Romeo and Juliet story, by the third episode, you would go, okay, so there's nothing original here. You're just redoing the same exact story. It's just a different member of the group. And what makes it even dumber is that each group member has already seen this play out before with their other friends.
Mm-hmm.
So you would be screaming, going, this is so stupid. This makes no sense at all. This is boring and repetitive and lazy and unimaginative. And that's what we've seen here. It's literally retelling the same story almost shot for shot, at least 3 times, if not a couple more throughout the rest of Star Wars, by characters who know this exact storyline and plotline from people that they know personally in their own lives within the universe. Like,
yep.
Leia and Luke are really scratching their heads and going, geez, well, I wonder what he could be up to. Really? You're wondering? You lived through this story already.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, and like I've outlined, it's like there is no character development here. It's jumping from plot point to plot point. Like Poe's story in this is, hey, by the way, Poe once had a semi-shady background. So what?
Yeah, so has everybody else in the Resistance.
Well, and I'm like, does it inform his character in any meaningful way that is relevant to this plot? No. Does it expand him, make him interesting somewhat? No. It adds nothing. Finn does not go through a character arc here. Finn basically just goes, hey, I want to tell you something, but then never does, and then gradually figures out, oh, hey, I can feel things. Like, it's not a character arc. He doesn't learn anything. He doesn't grow. He doesn't expand in any way. Like, I've heard some stuff talking online about, like, oh, it's him finding his place. And I'm like, that's what the last movie was literally him figuring out, oh, I want to be a rebel, not just someone standing on the sidelines. And now you're telling me that this movie is him figuring out he wants to be a rebel? Like, that's so... That's just dumb. It's dumb. And all of the, like, nobody, like, Ben Solo, above all, just got completely neglected by this movie. He's basically the main character of this story. You can try and claim that it's Rey, but no, this is the story of Ben Solo, and he just basically gets shafted with, like, I'm gonna try and get you to come to the dark side. Well, I'm gonna be good now for no reason. Like, I'm pretty sure that the only thing that JJ, like, when JJ was like, oh yeah, there's things I wouldn't have had the guts to do if it weren't for The Last Jedi, I'm pretty sure it's that he watched The Last Jedi and went, wow, none of us ever thought that Rian Johnson could sell us all on the idea of Reylo as well as he did. So now they're in love and we'll just have them kiss for no reason. And it's just like, no, they're not in love. They're not, they had a connection. That's not the same thing. Like, the fact that they're dealing with each other, they haven't had any time for this. That is just, it's just jumping through the beats of
childish
just,
attraction.
It is. Well, and it's childishly written.
Yeah.
Like, this movie is immature. And I don't mean it's not, it's not mature in the way that fairy tales are and you can still enjoy them as adults. I mean, it is less mature than it needs to be. It makes no sense. It's childishness pretending to be adults. And it's not. Oh, and I just... give me a moment.
Okay.
Wait, I had one more.
You got one more? Okay.
Okay, and here's one of the things that really gets to me about this entire thing that I like, so many people can't see is, like, so there's this Dorkly comic that they did about, like, if Last Jedi haters got the movie they wanted. And I've mentioned it briefly on here, but I've never shared it in the Facebook group or anything, frankly, because I thought it was a little condescending and insulting to people who didn't like The Last Jedi. And that's coming from me. So, I thought this was pretty insulting. And it's basically a series of scenes from the movies rewritten to be as cliche and over the top as possible. You've got like this scene of Luke simultaneously turning holding the lightsaber and raising his X-wing out of the ocean, while in this cool pose while smirking and going, "Thank you for bringing me this lightsaber. I'm still totally heroic and honorable, by the way. Nothing about aging 30 years and exiling myself for a decade while ghosting all my loved ones has changed any aspect of my personality or worldview." and he's got this really smug, idiotic look while he's doing it, and this comic just literally just jumps from scene to scene, being ridiculously over the top. And it's just like to the point that it's insulting. And here's where it ends is like you've got Leia and Han and Luke at the end sitting on the Millennium Falcon, and Leia's like, "Wow, that was a great by the numbers adventure with everything going exactly as expected." Luke, "Agreed, and thank goodness we all made it. All of us, even Han. I faked my death, kid." And then it's Luke looking at the audience, is like, "Now you can hold on to your childhood favorites forever. You never have to grow up or accept change. Everything went exactly the way you wanted it to go, which is what being a fan of something is all about. No surprises, nothing new, just a warm, comforting blanket of predictability." And I'm like, okay. I never brought this up, partly because I didn't post this on Facebook or anything, partly because also I was just like, nah, I don't want people to think I'm just hating on them for disliking The Last Jedi. But I watched Rise of Skywalker, and I was like, JJ basically just took that comic and made it into a movie. Except he's being sincere about it. Like everything, with Luke raising the X-Wing out with a smug look on his face, and Force, turns out I'm Force sensitive too. And then you've got like Holdo and Rose leaning in, and they're just like, "And we don't exist." And it's like, and I was like, both the dialogue is straight up that straightforward of just like, "Oh, we're good guys now. Oh, we don't believe that after all," and everything. And I'm like, this movie, if a bunch of people who didn't like Star Wars, who thought Star Wars was just a childish piece of crap for children that a bunch of adults just couldn't let go of when they needed to grow up, if those people were to make a movie mocking Star Wars fans, they wouldn't need to, because J.J. Abrams made it while being completely sincere. And the fan response, instead of being like, "This is straight up insulting to our intelligence," was, "Joke's on you. You can't insult us about our low standards because they're even lower than you thought. What now?" And I'm just like, oh my word, this movie is... It is insulting to, like, Rian Johnson made a film that respected the fans' intelligence, and they hated him for, and a lot of them at least, some people hated him for it. And then J.J. Abrams just made a pandering film that just insulted everyone's intelligence watching it, and a ton of people are really thrilled with that. And I'm just like, I can't even wrap my head around what people's thought processes are to bring them to this. But
I wonder if we're actually running into the what I thought was just a crap commentary on Star Wars and the state of Star Wars in the recent past. So George set out to make some films for kids. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 were the same. Mm-hmm. The sequel trilogy hasn't, at least in my opinion, hasn't tried to follow that mold.
No.
Yeah, correct.
Until this movie. I think what we're running up against is that we've grown up with Star Wars, and so we are more capable of taking a much more mature story, and now we've gotten something that was, again, targeted maybe towards that younger audience.
Maybe. Even then, though, the prequel storytelling was more consistent than this.
Yeah.
Like, even if it was weirdly childish in a lot of ways, it still was more coherent and logical than this. Mm-hmm. This is just people, like, see, and that's the other thing, like, when I've been reading criticisms of this from people who gave it good reviews. So I was going through and I was like, I want to see how this managed to get a 57% on Rotten Tomatoes, because that's way above what I would give it. And so I'm like, how did this manage to get even that high? And because, like I said, I told you guys beforehand, one of my favorite movie reviewers gave this an 8 out of 10. Mm-hmm. And it's like, but that's the thing, is I've known for a while, he has a pretty hefty blind spot when it comes to Star Wars. Like, he stops being critical. He just accepts whatever happens and is just like, yeah, it's great, it's fine. And that's what a lot of people are doing. A lot of people, it's like, if they were given a movie of this that wasn't Star Wars, they would be going, this makes no sense. This is, and like, who are these characters? This is crap. But because it's Star Wars, they're just like, yep, okay. They're just filling in all the gaps on their own and that. But then you have the other side, and this is actually more of the good reviews than the ones that I'm like, this was just people geeking out over Star Wars. The most of the good reviews that I read were pretty clearly from people who don't really care for Star Wars, going like, oh yeah, it's dumb and stupid, but it's Star Wars. Of course it is. Star Wars is dumb and stupid. And I'm just like, when you've got a film who a good chunk of its greatest critical supporters are people who are dismissive of Star Wars, and they're the ones going like, yes, this is dumb and stupid, but what else do you expect from Star Wars? Like, that's not good. Mm-hmm. That's not good, because I do expect, like, I've seen so many people being like, the Star Wars fans being dumb again, and these are people who were really dumb about Last Jedi often. I'm just like, okay, excuse me, I'm sorry that you've hated on a movie for 2 years, but now because some people don't like this movie immediately after it came out, all of a sudden it's not okay to do that. But no, it's like a lot of people being like, oh, if you go into this movie with ridiculously high standards, then of course it's not going to meet it. And I'm like, no. What happened here is not that I went into this movie with ridiculously high standards. I did everything I could to lower my standards. I fully expected this movie to completely just toss out everything I loved from Last Jedi, and I was okay with that. But my problem is that it did it so poorly. Like, if it had at least given me a consistent story that was well thought out and constructed, I'd have been fine, but it didn't. And I'm like, the problem here is not that I'm holding it to ridiculously high standards. The problem here is that I am holding it to a standard at all, even the most based crap low standard, while so many other people are not holding it to any standard whatsoever. But it's just, yeah, there is no real standard. Like, a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, it was great because we all knew it was Star Wars and there were explosions and there were ships and everything, and none of that has to do anything to do with writing. And so people are just like, yeah, it's fine. And I'm like, it's not. If you actually look at this with any sort of critical eye, it is not. It is as poorly written as the prequels, if not worse. It is the bottom of my Star Wars list. Mm-hmm. I would watch Holiday Special before this because, I'm not kidding. Like, they're both astoundingly painful to watch, but at least Holiday Special is shorter. Like, I fell asleep during this movie in the theater.
True. It was really funny when Chris woke up. It was totally one of those, like, jarring, the arm goes
something
flailing.
Loud happened on screen, and I was like, wow, what? Did I just fall asleep? I fell asleep during this movie. And I was just cringing in my seat by the end of it. Like, I was just shrinking down. Like, every time the screen went dark, I was like, please let it be the end. Please let that be the end. Don't give me any more. Don't do this. And then Rey's on Tatooine, and I was like, no! Just let it be the end. And it was just,
Something I felt kind of bad for in the theater. I laughed when Kylo died.
Yeah. See, and I didn't. I like when as soon as like she sat up and I was like, oh, they're gonna kiss, and they did, and I was like, that was completely unearned. There's not enough to sell that they would be doing that, and then they kiss, and then she dies, or no, he brought her to life. Yeah. So I was. It's like she had. That's right. She was dying, and I was like, okay, so now he's gonna heal her. They're gonna kiss, then he's gonna die, because this movie is bald-facedly cliche. I'm so bored, and it just hurts how stupidly cliche this movie is.
I was just excited that they got him.
That they killed him.
They killed him.
See, but that's the thing, is I was going in and I was like, you know what? If he was redeemed or if he dies, I don't care. If he stays evil, I don't care, as long as they don't give me that stupid redemption equals death trope. Because that is the lowest of the low. That is just the laziest possible writing. It's like, well, we want people to be able to come good, but we don't want I want them to have to deal with the consequences of all the bad things they did. Nobody would ever want to become good if they thought maybe there were consequences. Like, it's like, well, that's not a good thing to teach people, because there always will be consequences if you've done bad things. It's like, but it's like, no, we don't want there to be consequences, so let's just have him die. Because that is the reason for that trope, is so that we can have an easy, convenient, oh, the bad guy became good, and now we don't want to deal with any of the logistics that could happen there, so he just dies conveniently from a broken heart, same as Leia. Like, that's basically what happened to Leia there.
That was another thing I was confused on, actually, is what was that whole thing? Was she like connecting with Ben at that point?
Who knows?
Was it him just sensing her dying, and that's why he paused?
Yeah.
Oh, and sorry, I did forget that arbitrary thing. It was like, Mommy was there for a second, and she died.
But was she?
And then I got stabbed and healed, so now I'm good. And I'm like, oh.
Well, because see, that's the thing is we never saw her. He just kind of stops. I mean, it looks just like when they're sensing.
Like he knows she's dying or something.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wait, now my mom died. Now I'm good. It's so dumb. So dumb. But yeah, it didn't really matter. So my headcanon is that she went out the way her mother did. She died for no reason because the plot demanded it, and
It runs in the family.
and Ben was breaking her heart, and that's what happened. And then Ben died because, don't want to deal with the consequences of becoming good, so guess I better die. It was lazy, childish, immature writing.
Okay.
Do you have things you did like?
Yep.
Yeah, it's made me like Rogue One better.
Nothing about this movie?
nothing.
There are
okay.
things in the movie that I'm like, they're very small things, but
Yeah.
I have several very small things and then one bigger thing that still isn't all that well done,
yeah.
but we're going to talk about it anyway. So, them addressing that Holdo's maneuver was a 1 in a million thing.
Sure. That was just on the list of things we have to
And-
address.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
that one was one of the more skillfully done ones, though.
Yes.
That felt more natural to say that there
Right.
than most of what they did.
Rey's lightsaber being yellow. I was like, okay, cool. So, some variety. All right.
Gotta sell some new lightsaber toys, so
Yep.
we're gonna have Rey's and Leia's.
So I was okay with that. Several nods to other things throughout the movie. Like there was a when they're like gathering ships and stuff, and then after the final battle when they're returning and landing and everybody's partying, doing the Ewok celebration 2.0. There's a slaver ship from season 5 of Clone Wars that I was like, okay, you guys brought that ship in. All right,
Oh,
makes
hey.
no difference.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump in here real quick too. So we've got this scene where Lando shows up with the cavalry, basically the cavalry's arrival moment. And I just want to point out how badly done that is. Like compare that to Helm's Deep, where it's like, okay, these are people that got kicked out by their king, and so now them showing up with Gandalf at this point is an emotionally moving thing, because it's these people coming to the rescue of the people they care about, even though they were treated badly, and they ride in, and it's a very brief, quick thing. It's like basically they show up and the game's over. We're not asking you to deal with too much more. Like, and then or Avengers Endgame, which I just watched a video about how poorly done the final battle stuff in Avengers Endgame was. It was brilliant, and it was totally right, because it's basically like, instead of actually having story here, we're just gonna, fan pander for 10 minutes while we wait for the good guys to win. But that cavalry moment was on your left that everybody loves so much, that's meaningful because we've set it up in advance, but also because we know who all of these people are. We know how they got here and everything. This one does set up that Lando's going to get some people, but it's like, who are these people? They haven't been part of this trilogy. It's like, yeah, for a lot of fans, they're going like, oh, the ghost is here, and oh, look at that ship and that ship and that ship, but it's meaningless. We don't see any of the people. It's like, is that ghost ship being flown by Hera Syndulla? What the F has she been doing for the last 30 years? Where was she with Crate?
Yeah.
Like this, it's really just, hey, we're going to gather in a bunch of crap that you all recognize because we know that you have substituted being able to recognize something for emotional meaning in stories. And so you'll just go, oh, that makes it meaningful, when it doesn't.
Yeah. No, and I am not trying to say that these are meaningful. It
just occurred to me, and it was along with
and I had one more bad thing that I forgot that Chris reminded me of. Apparently Ahsoka died.
What?
Oh yeah,
she was one of the voices.
The voices, yeah.
Sure.
So we kind of expected her to be alive at that point, but.
Also, like, you had a similar thing with the, like, oh, we're not going to kill Chewie, we're not going to kill 3PO, and you had it with them catching Finn and Janna at the end, where it's just like, y'all, like, no, we can't, like, I'm fine with sacrifice if it's a meaningful sacrifice. That actually would have been one. I was like, oh, okay, if Finn dies in a meaningful sacrifice, no, he won't. Never mind. Sorry, I forgot what movie I'm watching for a second there. I know he's not going to die here, and so I was just sitting there watching, like, nope. Okay, here's Poe coming, and then it's like, oh, but we're even faster, and then Lando flies in, and I was just like, of course, because that is one of the key things of what fans want from their sequels. Is it's like, oh, it's okay if the new guard is cool, as long as the old guard is always cooler in every way. We have to have them show them up at every possible turn to remind us that we were justified in liking them best and first. And I was just like, so dumb, so heavy-handed, and so just, anyway, thank you.
So the biggest thing that I like was done much better in a different movie.
Sure.
Has, I think, pretty much everything.
Everything in this movie is from another movie and was done better there, yes.
Yeah. So, I enjoyed the redemption arc of Kylo Ren for the little that it was, but the idea that people go to the dark side or make poor choices, and sometimes they continue to do so because they feel that they have done too much bad for too long, that they are beyond saving. They are beyond hope. I think many people, myself included, have felt that way at one point in their life.
Absolutely.
And so I'm going, okay, so that aspect of this, to me, is very relatable. And the idea of like, well, I would like to come home, but I can't because who would bother taking me back after what I've done?
It's the prodigal son. Where it's
yeah,
like,
prodigal son,
hopefully
exactly.
they'll give me a place, waiting the table.
And so I enjoyed that aspect of it. And then to have Han Solo basically be like, no, look, like, stop being stupid. You're still our son. We always will love you. Like, we will, basically the message that it's never too late to start making correct choices, to start making the world a better place around you and being a good person.
Yep.
Like, that effort is never wasted. I love that message. However, it's done way better in V for Vendetta.
Sure.
When he goes to kill the doctor, who was the only person who showed any remorse for what she had done, and he kills her in her sleep before she even knows he's there with, some poison in a needle or whatever. And she asks him, is it too late to apologize? And he said, never. He leans forward and he says, never. And she's like, I'm so sorry. That moment is so beautiful. Same exact message, but done about 1,000 times better. Mm-hmm. And so that was the one thing where I'm like, okay, you conveyed this message not super gracefully, but that message I think is an important one, and that was good. That
it is
was
an important
literally
one,
the only good thing in the movie.
but it's one of those
story-wise.
things that I do think the redemption equals death constantly undercuts. Is that it's like,
Oh yeah,
it's like it's never too late to come back, but depending on what you've been doing, coming back might entail hefty prison sentences
Yeah.
or something like that. And it's always better to try and be better and make things better. But this notion that you can just do so without any consequences is bull.
yeah.
It's
No, I'm not
bull
saying the
crap.
movie doesn't
No,
undercut
and
that.
I'm just saying that's why that has less meaning to me, is because
But
I
that
already
was
knew
about
where
the
it was
only thing I
going.
got done with the movie, and I'm going, I can't hate everything in this. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy.
I don't mind. I also similarly, I'm like the message of like, they win when they make us feel like we're alone. Like, you're not alone. You have friends, like, and everything. That's not a bad message. It's good to remember. It's just like, yeah, you're not alone and everything. And it's like, except sometimes you are. Like Last Jedi showed us, and it's just like we're not alone. It's like, well, you were though. And for some reason, you've apparently spent the last year remaining alone. Like, you've never gathered in anyone new.
Well,
and then Lando, like, literally, my sister and I were talking, and I was like, I guess the best headcanon I can get here is just that so many people at this point owe Lando so much money that he just basically went through the galaxy going like, hey, I'm calling in my mark. You're going to come fight in this. If you fight in this, take down one of the Death Stars, just whatever, everything is forgiven. Like, I will, your entire debt wiped clean. And the entire galaxy's just like,
Yep.
okay. Yep. Yeah. Man, the amount I owe you, sure, I'll show up.
I do like that headcanon, actually.
That's the only thing I can think of where it's just like, that's the thing, it's like, it feels like they're trying to respond to The Last Jedi and being like, no, you will have people at your side. You won't just be left alone. But it is seriously like a 5-year-old trying to address this complicated topic that an adult put forward. Like an adult sitting here like, sometimes you're alone. And that's a hard thing to deal with. Let's talk about ways you can deal with that. And this is a kid coming in and going like, no, you will always have friends. Oh, that's cute, kid. No, we won't. No, we won't. And anyway, and so it's just like, I like the message in theory, although I also think it's a message that people don't realize how easily that is adapted to things you hate too, where it's just like, okay, Nazis, don't worry, we're not alone. There are other Nazis in the world. There are white supremacists all over. The internet has allowed us to figure that out. We're not alone, so be brave. Like, that's not exactly a entirely positive message, but I don't fault Star Wars for not getting into that. I don't expect Star Wars to get into the weeds like Last Jedi did. I didn't expect that at all. But it's just the constant oversimplicity of this movie is just like, wow, we're just going the other direction heavy there.
They didn't actually solve their larger problem, didn't they?
Oh, no. Oh, of what? The First Order being
which
in
the
the
First Order
galaxy?
is still
yes,
around.
they did, because at the end
Yeah.
we got a bunch of shots of we're jumping around the galaxy and seeing Star Destroyers being destroyed. So apparently the second we destroyed the Emperor and everything, everyone everywhere rose up and overthrew the First Order, and everything's great now.
And did so easily. No
That
less.
is the level of tact and subtlety and storytelling that we have here, is just, well, the good guys beat some bad guys, and now everything's magically good everywhere.
They beat some bad guys in the unknown regions where communications in and out of are basically impossible. So Lando et al. Gather up everybody who's willing to fight against the First Order, takes them out of communication, where they fight a battle and win that nobody knows about. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy finally says, well, it's a Tuesday, I suppose. Let's put our fighting shoots on and get out there.
So
you know,
It's a Tuesday.
like, you know what I mean? Like, apparently, so you didn't do this before because,
and did it actually show any ships destroying those Star Destroyers? I just remember
No,
a bunch
it just
on
showed
their
them
own.
crashing. It looked like one of them had got holdo maneuvered, which I was like,
one of them. Yeah,
you're going to tell us that's 1 in a million and then show us someone doing it anyway? Like, oh my word.
So it
But
was bad.
I more or less liked Poe's interactions with Zori. Like, I didn't have any faults there. Like, they were little like all the dialogue and writing in this movie, it was rather heavy-handed and cliche at points, where it's just like, we have a history. It's like, yeah, well, we do. Okay. Like, that's basically, but I enjoyed mostly her shooting him down. Like, that was fun.
Yes.
I enjoyed
Yes, it
that.
was.
I did have this minor nitpick that I'm like, okay, this is me putting stuff on them. Okay. But, is like, she has that moment where she is like, you get to see her eyes, she takes that part of her visor off, and she never does it. And I'm just like sitting there like, I don't want to ascribe negative motivations to you, but did you not have her helmet because you didn't want them to see that the woman behind that mask is like over 40? Like, that you want people to imagine she's younger than that? And so you're only going to show her eyes because you're like, nope, she can't be attractive at that age, even though she's only 3 years older than Oscar Isaacs. Like,
And we all know how attractive I find him.
he's 40 years old, and she is 43. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like they might have kept her mask on just to hide her age.
She got more than what Gwendolyn Christie did.
That's true, she
Yeah,
did.
that's true.
But it just made me really uncomfortable, where I'm like, I don't want to just assume this, but I feel like that might be what's happening here. Anyway, but I did like her getting shot down by, or him getting shot down by her. I thought those were funny. I really liked Poe and Rey being at each other's throats at the beginning. Like, I was like, thank you. We're not just all, and no roses and daisies
good.
until we are, and then everything's better again. But, frankly, I just think they should have just not wussied out, and it's like, Poe has clearly got a thing for Finn, and that's clearly why he's so upset that Finn wants to tell Rey something. Like, I can't think of any other reason why for all that dialogue to happen, but whatevs. Let's see. I'm sure there were some other little things. I didn't mind the Han Solo scene. Like, it was a little heavy-handed and forced, but I was like, okay, it makes sense as a bookend, and as a, like, to reverse the feel of that earlier scene that we're mimicking now. It wasn't done that great, and again, Kylo has no reason to just suddenly be like, you know what, I'm good after all. But cool.
I did like that Kylo came to the conclusion himself, rather than someone having to kind of force it into him.
Except that, like, the best emphasis I can get for it is basically her just being like, I didn't want Kylo's hand, I wanted Ben's hand.
Yeah.
Well, and because
And
it's Kylo's thing has been acceptance. Well, Ben's thing has been acceptance, and I think that was supposed to be the point made, is that if he's thinking straight and then he gets that acceptance, it's not the strongest, but I think, I don't know.
That might have been what they're going for, sure.
Yeah.
Like, it would have made sense, but for me, I'm watching it and I was just like, this is basically just bad boy reforming for the girl.
And because that's also kind of the point of the conversation with Han Solo as well, is that this is my son, I see my son, Ben come back to us, it's never too late, sort of thing.
But that's the thing too, is I'm just like, that's literally the exact same conversation he had last time with him. Like, there's nothing new there, there's nothing, no push, it's just, it's basically just he waited long enough and realized, yeah, I guess I'll be good now. Which, I mean, happens in real life, people just get stuck in a rut long enough that eventually they realize, I gotta do something to get out of this. Sure, but it doesn't make for good writing. But, I liked the little droid dude that was fixing droids. Yeah.
Babu Frick.
Yeah, whatever. Babu Frick, yeah. He was alright. He was fun.
He was funny.
He's cute. Wasn't bad. But man, just also, this is a little thing too, but just like the kitschiness of this plot where it's like, we're hunting down Sith artifacts and we're hunting, like, it was all the worst of the EU stuff where I was just like,
Yeah.
they managed to build such great character-focused stories in the first two, and then this one was just like, and now this entire thing's just going to center around hunting down a MacGuffin and a plot coupon that we can trade for the chance to get to the ending. And
A plot coupon.
yeah, that's... Plot coupon is like a MacGuffin, only it actually does affect the plot. Like, you can't just swap it out with some other thing. But, yeah, it's basically just acting as a coupon that it's like, okay, we can get to the next part of the story now that we have this.
Okay. Well...
This 2-hour Nerf nugget.
Yeah. Which is now an episode.
Yeah, is now an episode.
Yeah. I think we're just going to call it there.
Yeah.
I will say, one of my other favorite things about this is just that I'm on the same page with you
I
guys.
know! That is actually a bright moment about this. We are all united.
Yeah, we finished the movie and walk over to Kyler because I can. Okay, so here's the thing in the theater. So Kyler and Chris and their respective wives and people they came with were on one side of the row. I was on the other side with Carrie, my wife, and Lindsay and Mike, who are my sister and brother-in-law, and then Andrew and his wife were in between us. Was there someone else? I guess it was Christina on the other side of them. Because I remember
Caleb and Becky.
Weren't they on the far side of you even? Anyway,
Yeah,
whatever it was.
Caleb and Becky were down by
I turned to Carrie real quick and was like, well, what'd you think? You know, we had a quick little conversation and I was like, I know these guys are going to hate it. And I look over, I lean forward and look over and I can already see Chris ranting. And it's like, okay, hold on, I gotta go. Yeah. and I walked over to them just to kind of listen in on what was going on. And Kyler goes, well, I bet I know what you have to think about it. Kyler was like, I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, you're probably fine with it. I went, frick, no. What's wrong with you?
I was so happy.
Yeah.
See, and I didn't hear either of you say that. So I got out and was like, I don't actually know where they stood on that.
Yeah.
And then, so I got on Twitter later and saw some of the things you were both retweeting, and I was like, oh, good. Oh, that's a relief. Oh, good. I don't have to worry about recording tomorrow, at least.
Yeah.
Oh, and I this is one more thing I meant to mention. Sorry, I'm going to drag this out even more. So, for the poor writing thing here, my wife is not a huge Star Wars fan. And so, and that's it's actually a great example of how bad the writing is here, that it's like, she's also not that picky about her stories. She's more picky than she was before she married me, that's for sure. That's a side effect of living with me, inevitably. Mm-hmm. But she's not that particular. And she was going into this where my sister and I were just like, we're gonna hate this. This is gonna be awful. But, you know, I was bracing myself for like, this is gonna be like Rogue One levels of bad, where I come out and I'm like, eh. And then slowly over time I start disliking it more. And then, nope. We can only see to what depths I can sink the more people talk about this. But, and so my wife was just like, yeah, and I'll come out of it being like, oh, it was okay. You know, whatever. I don't care. But that's the thing, is this movie rode exclusively on the coattails of how involved you are in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the three of us, not even that's enough to carry us. But for most of the people who are talking about how good it is based on like, oh, it's more Star Wars and I'm involved because it's Star Wars. My wife is not into Star Wars. She's not very particular. She's not as picky as me or anyone for the most part. She's pretty accepting of story. And she came out of that going, well, that was stupid. Like, that was just bad.
Yeah.
Like, just left and right, I kept throwing things at me where I'm like, why do I care? Why would I care about that? Why would I care about him? Why would I care about her? Why would I care about this? Why did that change even happen? It makes no sense. Because she's not pre-invested in Star Wars, she even though she's not very particular about her stories, she's sitting there going, this is crap, because it's laid bare for her because she doesn't have that veil of liking Star Wars that so many people do.
Yep.
Anyway.
So, we hope you survived that.
Yeah.
And we, in the future, are going to give those of you who did enjoy Rise of Skywalker a chance to try to convince us.
Yes.
That's going to be...
We are?
Yeah.
Well, I am absolutely ready for someone like Chris to come along in favor of it.
Well, see, but here's the thing. I've been actively searching for that for Rogue
Right.
One for 3 years now, and I've never found it.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's going to be a couple of months from now.
Oh, I'm going to be sick a couple months.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah,
this you're going to be gone that day.
We'll just put out like an APB. Please, if there's someone that can empirically show how awesome this is, please come talk to us.
Yeah.
You know.
But anyway, that's for the future.
Because it's not.
And be sure to follow us on Twitter at More Civilized, and join the Facebook group at More Civilized Podcast,
Where you can find such awesome things as this week's shout out and favorite listeners. Again, I'm pandering to my audience because I'm the one choosing these for the most part. I have been so tickled with the Great Meme War. The
Great Meme War of 2019 has been
That's right.
phenomenal.
Absolutely spectacular.
Some of those
around.
memes I have been just like guffawing, like I can't help myself. Like I see it and it's just involuntary. I start busting out laughing. They're so good.
Every single one of them. Really, I haven't found one I haven't liked. Yeah. So
I'm gonna give my own shout out though to our fact checker Steven for his set of memes that he like. I got such a kick out of those. So there was the one that was it's like someone dislikes The Last Jedi, Chris. So anyway, I started blasting. I was like, that's fair.
Yeah, I was dying.
Someone still dislikes The Last Jedi after hearing Chris talk about it, the visible confusion. And I was like, oh, shucks. Yeah. But my favorite was the Thanos meme. Like, have Chris do another Last Jedi episode. But, sir, the episode length, just do it! That was freaking hilarious. I laughed my head off at that.
And I wanted to call out Andrew Porter and Kyle McPherson in particular for all their work.
Yes, and Mark Tanner as well.
Mark as well, that's right. Mark Burdett's been doing
Tanner has been
several.
on it.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
so
you
good.
all.
The memes have been fantastic.
So fun. Yeah.
And if you are only following us on Twitter, you are doing yourself a disservice by not seeing these memes. They are just top quality, top-notch memes. Yeah.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Random Paladin.
I'm on Twitter at Itinerant Baxter.
You should change it to Irate Baxter after this.
And congratulations to those of you who dislike Newsy News for making it through a whole episode without any.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we still said the name, but...
Because we started this as a Nerf nugget, we didn't do any news. So.
Yeah.
That's true. Anyway, we'll see. Oh, and Merry Christmas, everybody.
Oh, yeah, Merry Christmas. If you're listening to this on Christmas, bonus liked by us points for you.
Yeah,
right.
and we're sorry to bring your Christmas way down.
Well, I mean, unless they disliked it, in which case we're offering them validation. But
Yeah,
originally we were going to be thematic and talk about toys, so you get that next week.
yeah.
Yep.
But
While you're playing with your toys.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Well, there you go. We'll see you guys next week.
And may the Force be with you.
always.
I'm Anna Graves, and thank you for listening to a More Civilized podcast.
But let's shoot for a half an hour on the Nerf Nugget.
Yeah.
So let's avoid repeat comments as much as possible. And I'm saying this as much for myself
I've been
as well
working this
because
down to like, okay, here are my primary.
and that's why I wrote stuff out last night to help organize my thoughts. Oh boy.
I just keep finding new and creative ways to express my disappointment. It's hard to restrain from